on their record, they Yes.
No.
Oh, hi. This is exactly the same.
So, yeah.
All right, I'd like to get the meeting started. Oh, my mic's not on. Can we hear? Yes, I'd like to get the meeting started, and let's go ahead and have the roll call. Nobody's gonna.
Sure. Rob Bronowski. Present. Jan Chris.
Present.
Stephen Kane.
Present.
Elizabeth Martinez. Paula Torres.
Here.
All present.
Stand for the flag salute, please.
Juliet. Zamora.
Will Juliet Zamora come up, please?
Okay. In your heart, ready, and salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Where's my nails?
She wanted to shake your hands.
Good job. Thank you, you did a good job.
Good job.
Thank you.
Next, we have the community and student staff recognition, and Mr. Ward from Lad Lane will be presenting.
Good evening. Are we on? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our new board members, and welcome back to our seasoned board members. And Dr. Barr, nice to see everyone tonight. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to recognize our staff. I'm Kip Ward, principal of Lad Lane School, and first of all, I wanted to draw your attention to our board over there, our bulletin board, and thank Melanie Mailer. Did she make it out tonight? Is she here? Well, when you see her, tell her great job. It looks wonderful. And if you get a chance to take a look at the 3D projects down there on the table, our students have the ability to design things and put in coordinates and then print something from the 3D printer. And we're really proud of that. So if you get a chance to take a look at that, it would be wonderful. And it does look great, and nothing to do with me, because the other day I was here and Melanie was working on it and she said, I have to step out. I said, do you want me to keep going? And she went, no, please. I mean, she didn't want to say it. And I said, you don't want me to touch it, do you? She said, no. I said, okay. So I had nothing to do with that. We're going to start with our community recognition with our, we have two for our speech and language pathologists. And the first one I'd like to welcome up is Barbara Stillwell. Thank you, brother, for everything. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Mika.
Thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you very much.
Okay, next I'd like to recognize our parent club, the Ladd Lane Parent Club. What a group of ladies. I mean, phenomenal, hardworking ladies that are behind the scenes. They're there early, they're there late, raising money. And I see our teachers nodding their heads in the audience. So much hard work, so much time, and ladies, I cannot say thank you enough. So it makes me proud tonight to get to recognize you publicly because what you do for our school is outstanding. So the first person I'd like to recognize is Debbie Campbell.
You go shake their hands and then stay over there because they want to take a picture. They want to take a group shot after.
Oh, thank you, Debbie. Selfies. Okay, the next lady I'd like to recognize is Penny Barna. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then we'll have Deanna Escobedo. Alicia Zamora. Next we have Amy Moore. Jennifer Murphy.
Are not. Oh my gosh, how are you?
And last,
Thank you for your service.
and last but not least is Vanessa Inigan.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to do.
Ready?
Put that on Insta face.
Yeah. It's fingers.
Okay, next I'd like to recognize some people from our special ed department, and I cannot say enough good things about this group of people. The fact that day in and day out, week in and week out, month in and month out, and year after year, they're there for our students with special needs with so much heart, so much compassion. It makes me proud to be a Ladd Lane every.
Use your cheer voice. Yeah.
My coach voice. It makes me proud to be at Ladd Lane every single day to see our staff caring for our students with special needs. And I cannot thank you enough. And it's really one of the greatest parts of my day at Ladd Lane that I get to experience that on a regular basis. Just that dedication behind the scenes, doing their thing every day. So I'm going to start with our teachers, and the first teacher is Layla Clifford. There's a two certificates. Big one. Next, Maywater Hart. Thank you. And thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite Mr. Rodell Laurel to come up. Got that pro cap down. We practiced. Okay, Nextly, I've been working with this teacher for quite a few years and we've gone through a lot together, and I want to say thank you so much to Shannon Parsons. And next, we have another dedicated teacher who's just always there and always doing what she needs to do for her students, no matter what it takes, and that's Timmy King. Okay, next we are going to go with our Slippa, and she does an amazing job supporting our speech and language pathologist, and that's Vanessa Rodriguez. Thank you. Now I want to get into our paraprofessionals. We have quite a few paraprofessionals. If you've made a visit to Lad Lane, you know that we have 4 special day classes that serve students with special needs, from moderate to severe special needs. And the paraprofessionals are the backbone. They're the people that are there supporting the teacher. And again, I'm so proud to work with all of them and to see what they do every day. And I can't thank all of you enough. I know that this is a certificate, a handshake, but really so much more, so much more respect and thankfulness that I have for all of you. And so I'd like to start with our first person, which is Rosario Rodriguez. Thank you. Then next we have Estella Garcia. Okay. And Carol Garina. And what about Silly Salcido? Thank you. And then we have right here in the front row, we have Amanda Cosilla.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, Smiley, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Next we have Cindy Leon. Vanessa Deanda. Go Baylors. Next we have Jillian Papa. Michelle Ortiz. Maria Elias. There you go, Maria. Maricela Delgado. No. Nope. Didn't make it. And then Maricela Yanez. Nope. And Juanita Linos. Nope. Okay. Thank you so much for allowing me to meet. And I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go, you have dance.
No!
Run.
Please, no!
Do we have a translator?
Well, you're supposed to ask.
There was no closed session, so no announcements. Before we approve the agenda, Dr. Barr has something to add.
Just a couple of amendments.
First of all, our first report tonight is delayed in traffic, so it's going to be a little later, so we will need to go around item 8A and go to some of the next reports and come back to it as he's able to make it here. So that's just a delay, a little bit out of order. And then the administration is requesting that, I'm looking at it the wrong one. John, what item is it on the agenda now? It's 11A, excuse me, 11A, we're going to ask the board to table item 11A to the next board meeting, because as it turns out, we have a number of items which will need to be come forward. This one, item 11A was asking the board to approve an increase in the scope of work on the design build for the school at the Santana Ranch development. And there are a number of increases, changes that will be coming forth. And we thought rather than bring you one tonight and another one next time, another one the next time, that they all be brought together. This one was in particular interest to the board because they wanted to know about the scope, how much the scope would increase with some kind of a retaining wall around the outside of the school. There are also requests for cabinetry in each of the classrooms. There's also a request for, that has come from the toxics oversight group with our science rooms, that there has to be certain provisions made to classrooms that we weren't aware of in the design. So our hope is to bring you back all that we know about it this time with the price changes that it would include. And by the way, the 100% design that you approved did get submitted to the DSA on January 4th. And one of the, while we're waiting for the prices on all these different ones, it's best to keep yourself in line at the DSA. They will accept amendments as you go along. But if you pull it back and do all these changes, then you get another place to come in to submit for initial review by the DSA 3 or 4 months down the road. So that's the table 11A.
So if I could ask, because aside from the cost, there's public interest in one of those items, significant interest in one of those items that you mentioned that's part of 11A. So can we still discuss it? It's the wall. Still discuss it even though we're not talking about the cost. Because I think as a board, I would like to get your, for us to discuss it, even before we start talking about the potential costs.
I personally, John, I'm going to talk out of turn here, but I personally think it's wise. If an item needs discussion, this is under discussion / action. If the board wants to discuss it without taking the action, I don't see a problem with that. In fact, I think it's wise in order to bring back a complete picture at one of the forthcoming meetings. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Mr. And we will leave it on the agenda then, ask the board not to table it, leave it on, but we will be asking for discussion only.
Okay, because I'd like to talk to John about what we can do about the bedtime.
All right. Does anybody else want to add anything or delete anything from the agenda? Can I? If not, yes.
Oh, it's where. No, let's go. I'm fine.
Can I have a motion?
Well, wait, where is the carpet on here?
That's it.
That would be the consent.
11B.
Those are the colors.
No, for the carpet. for
What
the
colors?
board.
Carpet.
It's under consent.
That's it.
That's 9,
Consent agenda.
9G.
Okay, I would like to pull that out to discuss.
Anything else?
What item is it? 9?
9G.
On the consent item.
you have to vote on removing that item from the consent agenda. Placing it
So you can make a motion to
cold.
pull it?
I would like to make a motion to pull 9G so we can discuss the cost run over. It's over 15,000. And
You don't have to say.
Yeah.
no.
I don't have to say
No.
just,
So in support of Jan, I'll second it.
okay.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, it'll be pulled and we will discuss it under, at the end of after the consent agenda.
Okay,
So then I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda as requested, right?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
All opposed? Are we ready to move on?
Mr. Chairman, if I might just say, I know we're going to go to public comments. I just thought I would introduce a very special guest we have tonight in the audience. He's no stranger to anybody here, but I think it's great that he's here and attending the meeting even before he starts. It's our forthcoming superintendent, Mr. Diego Ochoa. He's in the audience.
Okay, moving on to public comments.
We have some.
Board policy allows each speaker to speak 3 minutes. The Brown Act prohibits the board taking action at this meeting on items discussed during this time.
Angela Higgins.
Good evening, Board of Trustees. Good evening, everybody else. There are 3 items in the three cost items, well, now 2 that you'll be voting on, but as I read the board warrants and as I read some of the contracts that are in the board packet this weekend, if I were an outsider, I would kind of believe that the host or school district's first priority is not education. One of the board warrants, it's a smaller one, is for $1,500 for one site license for DigiCoach, which is an advanced digital coaching system to allow administrators and coaches to have a digital tool to walk in and help track and remind them of what to look for and help track what they're looking for. We've been begging, the teachers have been begging for the last, 2-3 years for accelerated reader, and that costs about $1,500 per site. It suggests to us that the district believes that the work outside the classroom is more important than the work inside the classroom. So if we're looking at making our actions match up with our words, that's one of those things where there's definitely a disconnect. A second thing is, there's, according to the board packet, the carpet in here is looking to be replaced. It's gonna cost about $16,000, and I'm looking tonight, and I've seen people spill stuff on the carpet. I can't find the stains on the carpet. It's looking great to me.
It's new.
It is new carpet.
It's already in.
Yeah, we installed the 16,000?
Yeah.
Okay, because R.L. Harding's still waiting to be finished painted. That it was remodeled 3 years ago. So this, you can see, again, the environment away from the schools is more important than the schools themselves. That's what it looks like. And then the freezer, the walk-in freezer, is it already installed in the warehouse? $170,000. And we've been pushing R.L. Harding and Sunny Slope don't have built-in cabinetry in the remodels, right? We got the mobile furniture because it was too expensive for built-in. And then the quote for Santana Ranch for the entire school was gonna be about $250,000. I mean, again, $250,000 at a school or $170,000 here, and the warehouse issues we have concerns with. Teachers are spending extra money because of the new, the way we have to order ahead of time. It makes it more difficult to get our supplies. So as you discuss things, as you think about things, hopefully we can start changing the culture in the district so that our actions actually support when we say education is our first priority and the kids are our first priority. Thank you.
Kristen Dale.
Here I am. Good Good evening, I'm Kristen Dam, I teach second grade at Calaveras. And I'm here tonight because I want to say thank you. I'm not sure who to specifically thank, but I want a great big thank you on the record to everyone involved in lowering second grade class size at Calaveras. I started the school year with 33 students. I had 33 students from August through December, again, second graders, 7-year-olds. On January 8th, a new second grade class was opened at Calaveras. My class size went from 33 to 22. Having 11 fewer students has made such a positive difference in my classroom. Before, I would shake my students' hands each morning and quickly move to the next student. I was still the very last class to go inside each day. Now when I shake my students' hand in the morning, I can ask how they're doing and actually take time to listen. Before, when I was doing guided reading, I met with my students on a rotating basis. Remember, these are kids learning to read. The neediest students met with me the most, but those students who I could push the furthest and those students who almost got it, well, I was only able to meet with them every other day. Now, I can meet in small reading groups every single day with every single student. Feels good. Before, I spent a lot of my teaching time on classroom management. You can imagine there were a lot of distractions in my classroom. Now I can work with individual children and I can reteach something they just aren't understanding and know that the students will work quietly on their own or with a partner while I remediate for one student or a small group. One of my students is nearly nonverbal. Before we opened a new classroom, she rarely spoke. Now she speaks a tiny bit every single day. The list of positive changes I've seen in my classroom could go on and on. Not only am I a happier, more effective teacher, my students are really starting to thrive. I explained it to one of my non-teaching friends this way. If you take 3 kittens and place them in a cage, they can each sit in their corners, do their kitten things, and be happy. However, if you add 30 more students to the same cage, then not one single kitten in that cage is happy. Same thing goes with students. As we look forward to our next school year, I'd like to ask each of you to remember to please put children first. Please remember that smaller class sizes are crucial for not only academic learning, but also for our students' social and emotional well-being. Again, thank you for lowering class size and creating a much better learning environment for all second graders at Calaveras.
That's it.
Move on. 8A, report on general obligation bond. Are we going to do any of that? That's okay.
I just go around.
Double checking. 8B, report on certificated substitute pay rates and usage. Erica Sanchez.
Good evening, members of the board, staff, and community members. Tonight, upon request of our board, I will be presenting on the certificated substitute usage and the current pay rates. Oops. Let's see, here we go. So to begin with, substitute teachers help keep our instruction consistent for our students. We all realize that that is very important. Some of the reasons that we employ certificated substitutes are listed, all of the various different leaves that a certificated staff member can request a substitute for. We also employ substitute teachers for, at times, to coach for middle school athletics, and then sometimes as extra hourly employees to do and participate in testing or intervention courses or during summer school. Oops, I'll figure this out. Here we go. This colorful bar graph here is a representation of the different reasons and amounts that we use subs for. The dates depicted on this bar graph are from August 13th to November 12th, which was a substantial amount of time. I would like to call our attention to the vertical axis. It is in the hundreds. The increments there go by hundreds. The arrow there is indicating that the lavender, the purplish color is release time. I often am asked, HR, Erica, why do we need subs? Is it that we have chronic sickness? As this bar graph shows, our certificated staff is not absent due to sickness. Sickness is the top portion of the bar graphs there, the orange color. It is because of the release time. We offer different release times for our staff in regards to professional development, to participate in instructional leadership teams, and we have been increasing that in the past couple of years or so. So again, from August to November, we have a large amount of release time that is being, that was used. The next bar graph is from November 13th to January 15th. Again, we can see that release time is one of the major reasons why our teachers are not in the classrooms. If we compare both graphs, we do have a higher sick rate, I would like to say, on Fridays and sometimes Mondays. This bar graph, because it depicts a shorter amount of time, the vertical axis goes up by 50, whereas the other one was 100. I do want to call out that difference. Again, however, our staff is not calling in sick consistently to where we would see a big discrepancy there in the amount of sick leave versus the other leaves. Right now, at this point of time in our district, we are employing a lot of release time. Moving on. The next graph is very small, I do realize that. I do want to explain that this information comes from 6,263 districts nationwide that use ASOP Frontline as their substitute assignment software, where we report, it's a software that we report our absences to, and it helps us obtain subs. The dark line on each graph is the Hollister School District. The lighter color is representing the 6,000 or so districts nationwide. So as we look, these graphs depict our fill rates. In December, we had an 88% fill rate, December 2018. In November, we had an 84% fill rate, and that's on average per day, every instructional day. I took the averages. And in October, we had a 79% fill rate. And to date, for January 2019, we have a 90% fill rate. We are pretty steady right now, and we're faring above what the national average is for fill rates for the entire group of districts that utilize ASOP Frontline as a service provider. The next graph on the next slide is similar. However, this one is a little bit different. What I do want to call our attention to is that this is from July 2018, August 2018, and September 2018. As we recall, as a district, we did struggle to fill some special education classes. We, as a matter of fact, had 10 vacancies that were filled with subs. 10 is a significant amount for our sub pool. So when we have a circumstance such as that, it threw off our fill rates. For those months, in September, we had an 88% on average fill rate. In August, we had a 79% fill rate, which is lower than the other fill rates. But as you can see, this was the beginning of the school year, and we've since stabilized when we compare it to the previous 3 months on the previous slide. Some things to consider is that we have, again, increased our daily use of release time. In 2015-16, we would only allocate up to 10 slots per day as a district. In 2016-2017, we went up to 20 slots, and we're currently, from 2017 to now, when we have release times, we secure anywhere from 30 to 35 substitutes to release staff.
Sometimes not everyone is released that wants to be released, but we also have to contend with folks, amounts of times that people call in sick, have discretionary leave or, something like that. That's in addition to these numbers here. We currently have 70 active certificated subs. Of these 70 subs, 30 of them are currently working in other districts. As far away as Santa Rita, in Monterey area. We also have some subs that commute to the South Santa Clara counties, such as Gilroy, for work. We also hire year-round. There's advertisements currently and continuously on EdJoin. We have flyers out. We inadvertently also recruit during recruitment fairs. Some folks are not done with the credential program and are interested, so we do provide them with information. There's also some websites called Indeed and LinkedIn that help employees or future employees find us. Also, we work with the California Commission on Teacher Credentialing that provides the permits for our substitutes and the life scans. There are different permits now that we work with that we have the ability to be a bit more flexible. One thing to remember is that in a general education class, a substitute can be there with a 30-day sub permit. In a special education class, it's 20 days. However, within the last 2 years, more permits have become available to us as a district. For example, the statutory leave permit that allows for us to work with a sub to obtain a permit that would allow for a sub to be in place 60 days and up to 90 days in place of a certificated staff member that is out on medical leave. If the criteria is available to us, we go out and we search for that special permit that we can, so that we can stay compliant and we can also provide the consistent instruction for our students. We as a district provide TB screening, the live scan screening, and then we get results from the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Upon hire, subs also participate in an orientation. We've developed a handbook for them. We review Keenan safety videos and go over all of the mandated reporter information, sexual harassment information, and we have preliminary information available to them regarding capturing kids' hearts, since it is a district-wide initiative. Now, going into our pay, this was approved July 27th, 2017. Currently, our daily rate is $150. Our half-day rate is $75, and our minimum day rate is $120. The last two bullets are the long-term rates. We have a long-term rate for general ed, and then we have a long-term rate for special education as a special incentive to try to obtain the subs and attract them to special education.
Have you finished your presentation?
I have, I think, one more slide.
Okay, I'll let you finish.
Okay. These are the current local rates that we compete with. As we can see, we are competitive with the exception of San Benito High School, who just upped their sub pay within the last fiscal year. They have an incentive that's higher than ours. They also have additional pay for the extra zero period. We don't have a zero period, but we can consider extra pay. There's also an incentive in Gilroy where there are additional stipends that are earned for every 50 days that are worked by a substitute. Those are the major differences between these districts and ours. Also, one last point to mention is that Pajaro Valley Unified subs are paid for professional development up to 3.75 hours. The professional development that we as a district provide is in the form of the orientation and the welcome to the district. We do not provide professional development unless there's a special invitation to PD in our district, and they do participate.
I have a question.
Yes.
Could you define fill rate for me?
A fill rate is when a substitute goes into a vacancy that requires a sub. For example, a classroom teacher, for the most part, will be classified as substitute required. The only exception would be if the classroom teacher was in a special assignment. For example, site support teacher, thank you. A speech and language pathologist does not have a substitute that goes in to fill for them. A school psychologist does not have a substitute that goes to fill in for them. A school counselor does not have a sub. Anyone who's designated as a substitute required, that's where we take the information from.
So, having done this not too long ago, when a teacher that's on site, let's say it's at the middle school, and you can't get a sub for that, but you get teachers working at the sites to cover that period, does that count as a substitute?
If the school site has designated as such, for example, if I am a site support teacher and I am pulled from my daily assignments to go fill for a third grade class, the school has an option to state in their filled by staff, therefore that class is filled. It's the designation that's given at the school site. It's not filled by an outside substitute, but a person was placed in there to cover the class.
But that count as a fill?
That would count as a fill
Okay,
rate
that was my
based on
concern.
this.
So how often does that happen? When I did my math here, it looks like we have about 40 substitutes, any one of which, or any number of which could be at some other district at any day. How often does that happen at a school? Because I know it's a burden on teachers to have to do it, even though they get paid for it.
Sure.
I'm wondering how often that happens.
The filled by staff designation, I did not place that data on this spreadsheet or on this PowerPoint. However, the schools that would probably employ that the most are the minority of the schools. For example, not all of our schools have site support teachers that could be filled. We do have instructional coaches, and it's my understanding they do not get pulled to fill substitutes. We have intervention teachers that my understanding is they're not getting pulled. I may be incorrect on that. Right now, it sounds like that they might be, but I don't believe it's happens as frequently as more than 50% of the time, because it's not all the schools that have these supplemental positions like site support.
How many more substitutes do you think we would need to stop that from happening?
I think it would depend on what direction our district is going in. That's a very good question, but I think that we have to also talk about, are we going to continue with the professional development that requires the release time, since it has grown exponentially? If that is a district goal, then I would say at least 20 more subs to keep with the fill rates and maximize the fill rates that we currently have. If we have, any other types of initiatives that would require staff to come to the district for a training or go elsewhere for a training, those would be, topics of discussion to consider.
Okay, thank you.
I looked at this data and I thought that we should be even a little more than the high school. We have the most students that we have to serve, and we should be paying the most so that we have the most substitutes. Because when we do release time, even if we're sick, it's just not, I know as a former middle school teacher, we did it on our preps, and we went in and we subbed. And, during your prep period, I was one who was working all the time on my prep. So that's, affecting my schedule with my students. And I know that for elementary teachers,
you know, they make lesson plans for the whole day and then they're called back and, you know, it's just not right. We need to respect the teachers.
I have a question about
Sure.
the subs that we have. Are they long-term subs or do we have like a high turnover?
So the turnover that I see personally in, you know, having the HR lens is that we usually hire our subs. Oftentimes we have subs that sub in the district that only want to stay as subs. We do have a small portion of those. But we also have substitutes that, you know, become popular at the school sites because they do a good job. They come back and they're working very, you know, diligently. They become interested in teaching and we end up hiring them on a special permit to fill a vacancy. That is one drawback, or excuse me, let me rephrase that. That's one moving target that I see when we are addressing the need for subs. We end up hiring ours. It's a good thing.
That's a good thing.
But we end up with that need, that constant need to fill that amount of subs that we employ.
Sorry, I was just thinking, I agree that we need to be at least comparable to the high school, at least, right, if not more. And then I also really curious and interested about the professional development at Pajaro Valley. And that's why I was asking about our subs, because if we have certain training, it sounds like we're only limited to this orientation, but if there's other training that comes up, they don't get that, right?
Yes.
Otherwise?
That's correct. So, some of the districts that I spoke to work with their curriculum department, and the curriculum department provides professional development such as classroom management, what to expect when, you know, you go into a classroom, how to work with any of the curriculum initiatives in the district. Whatever the district feels is the targeted professional development for the substitutes during that time period in the district, that is what is offered oftentimes.
I think in the future, the more people you can attract to education is going to be important because there's fewer teachers coming up, not more. And if we had something that would attract some of these people early on and get them interested in the district, I can only see it as a positive. We need teachers, there's no doubt about it.
Yes.
So Erica, great presentation.
Thank you.
So looking back at the charts, so we are actually doing a little bit better than the sample of 6,000 other entities, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, substitutes are the bane of any education system's,
Yes.
you know, existence, but we're not, in fact, we're unusual in the fact that we're doing a little bit better, right? So that's one takeaway. Okay. The second thing is our Friday absences are, did I, at least for the sick time?
Maybe Wednesday.
In this case, if we look, Wednesdays are historically, or right now, being used for more release time because we are contending with folks that do take sick leave on Friday. Friday is a little bit higher if we see on this chart from August to November. On Friday, that top portion of the bar graph represents the sick leave, the orange.
Right, so
That's more than Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Okay, and then the next one shows Wednesday as the highest, right?
Let me see if I can get there. Sorry. There we go. It still looks like Friday and Monday, because it is the top part, the lighter lavender color, that represents sick leave.
Okay, so my question is are those the worst days for us? Because what I'm thinking is because we have that issue, should we, if we are having problems getting subs on Friday, which I sure are, paying them more on that day to compensate for all the other absences?
That could be something that the board recommends to me to bring back, as far as what the board would like to see is as a result of this report. If the board would like to see that compensation be looked at and increased to make us more competitive, then that could be something that I bring back as a discussion action item at a future board meeting, and the board would discuss it. and
Might even
vote.
consider that for Wednesdays too, because I think Jan talked about an elementary teacher writing up these lesson plans that, oh, sorry, no sub.
Yes.
So maybe Wednesday and Friday might be an idea, because it seems like it's pretty heavily used on Wednesday.
Yeah, but this is a deceiving chart because this is during Thanksgiving break, Christmas break. So you have very few days here.
This one here, yes.
Yes,
The
so
other one,
this is not that many days,
Yes,
so it's
this
not a
one.
really
We
not
looked at
many
this
days we're
a
looking
year
at.
ago or 2 years ago, it was the same phenomenon. We have a Friday, issue here. My other question is, has there been any polling done about what substitute teachers think of our school district versus the others?
that I have not done. I have not pulled the substitutes.
Because I did some informal polling of some substitute teachers, and the school environment makes a huge difference whether they're going to work at a particular school or not. And so I just think that that would be an important part of the data, because I don't think $10 a day is going to make or break someone, especially if one school district the environment is better than the other. And the other thing is are those release dates or number of release days, is that normal? That just seems like high.
Yeah, good question. As a district, we have increased the release days to accommodate for coaching, to accommodate for a contract with Partners, which is a vendor that has come in to work with instructional teams from all the different school sites. I don't participate in that, but I'll look over to Jennifer to see if there's any more information in regards to that. It is an initiative that the district has undertaken in the last 2 years, I would say, and it is for the benefit of the school sites to help build their capacity to take data dives, to look and consider what pockets of students would benefit from certain strategies, et cetera.
Well, to sum up my thoughts here, these release days are expensive, even if they're for professional development. We're doing other programs like the coaches, but overall as a system, we're not seeing our test scores rise up commensurately. So, I don't know exactly what the solution is, but collectively, all of this stuff that we think is supposed to do good, it isn't. And that's why I think we have to look at those release days and say, because that solves two problems, right? So, anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Chairman, if I might just weigh in a little bit here, to say that looking at a picture of the substitutes and the fill rate, the number of vacancies we have each day, and as compared to the number of substitutes that we have filling those, say 10 vacancies, 9 subs, it's a 90% fill rate. But we're looking at a very imperfect science here. Mr. Bernowski's opened that door already, pointing out that the district feels strongly about professional development and is engaging in a number of different kinds of professional development, which requires substitutes to fill in for teachers on professional development. Another item is the consideration of what's in the minds of substitutes is different from substitute to substitute. I can assure you that some substitutes will only teach at various grade levels. Talking about competing with the high school
or certain days.
A number of substitutes will only substitute at the high school, not at the elementary school. Some will only at the elementary, not at the high school. Some even limit themselves to certain schools. Some of them limit themselves to a proximity to their home. So, I mean, I'm pointing out it's not a perfect science by any small measure. And therefore, looking at the solutions to increasing the fill rate is complicated. And dollar amounts certainly are important. I'm not sure that substitute teachers would say that $10 makes the difference. I don't believe it does with most substitutes, but over a long time, if it's a 20-day assignment or a 30-day assignment, and if they have two comparable ones and one is $20 more than the other, and that may make a difference with them. So I do think that we should be comparable, especially with our neighboring districts. I'm not sure that it would be wise to start playing leapfrog, because the other districts will be having the same conversation next month that you're having here. And so, but I do think that it's wise to try to remain comparable with the districts for those subs that do take whatever first phone call they get, whether it's high school or elementary or this school or that school or 20 miles away or 10 miles away. So I would just ask that this board support the entire field of substitutes, keeping the pay comparable with at least the other local districts, and continually seeking to try to qualify more substitutes, so we will have 100% fill rate, and we won't have to ask teachers to fill in during their, that fill rate doesn't count the teachers that are coming in on their prep time to teach the other ones. And the professional development side, I think, is a great idea. Where we may be assuming when we talk about that substitutes are merely people with a bachelor's degree and no credential, just a substitute credential. We have people who have full credentials that are coming back and subbing. They may have been on leave, they may have just moved into the area.
That's one of my questions. Do we differentiate between a substitute with a bachelor's degree and a retired teacher coming in?
We do have a different pay scale for that.
$10.
Yes.
It's just $10, that's it? Okay.
So, yeah, there's all those considerations. So I just say that I think it's healthy of you to discuss substitutes. I think it's also healthy for you to know that it's a very imperfect science, but we should be comparable. We should provide professional development as well as we can. And I like the idea that you support professional development for your current permanent teachers, permanent probationary teachers that need that. And so those, I think if you keep those three concepts in mind at the forefront, comparable pay, the great support that you have for professional development for all of your teachers, and the great and the opportunity to look at any additional training that any substitutes might want or need.
And that's just by, polling them by, like Rob said, do we ask? And it's just, filling out a form online or something. I think it's important for you to kind of be able to differentiate what the draw is and what the needs are. Then to come back and let us know, this is what we need to focus on. Okay. This is where we need to invest our dollars when it comes to our subs or to draw them in. Because I think that's important, is having that ability to recognize where we're needing to meet, not just for our regular teachers, but also our subs, so that we can continue to have access to as many people. Because if they're happy when they come and they leave, and our interactions with one another, and we're meeting their needs as far as when they come and provide a service for us, I think that would just be a way.
My final point here would be, just like any employees, they are short-term, in some cases, one-day employees. But when you show them that you care about the service that they provide for you in whatever way and form that takes, the greater they will feel about serving this district.
I agree.
So I hope that you will continue these conversations and ask Erica to bring back recommendations that will show our substitutes that you appreciate their service, whether that means, a hike in daily pay or some kinds of in-services or what was the third one? Whatever.
Just how they're treated at the school.
That's right. And so that they're welcomed and they're made to feel valuable at every school they go to.
Yeah. Because we want to help them to
I'm
be
sure
able
they
to
are.
recruit,
Yeah.
and whether it's a regular teacher or substitute, you just gotta let us know what that is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, do you have some ideas that you wanted to have her come back with, or? I saw you writing there, I didn't know if you were.
Well, I don't know if we can find this out, but I would like to know about how many of them are retired teachers compared to new substitutes, and then how long they've been with us.
How long the subs have been with us? Okay.
I think that, I'd like to see us, match the, high school. I noticed that Gilroy pays a little bit more for special ed. Do we have trouble getting special ed, substitute?
We have trouble,
All right, so we might wanna look into that.
We don't pay anything extra for special ed.
it is a different pay scale, it is at a higher rate than our general education.
We do pay extra for,
Yes,
It's down here.
So can I make a suggestion? Because there's somebody in the school district, maybe it's you, that actually runs the sub program, right?
yes. We have an
So
employee.
instead of us coming, well, let's do this, let's do that, why don't we let them say, first, do we have a problem? Because at first blush, it doesn't, look well, we have a problem that every school district in the world has. And then, say, here's how we can improve it, and you guys come up with the ideas instead of us, and then we can comment on it, because we can't run the school district from up here.
I
mean,
agree.
Let the professionals do it. We'll have to approve pay rates, of course, but,
Yeah.
by doing that, I assume that you will say, here's what the anticipated outcome will be.
Okay.
I had one more thing. Retired teachers, that's probably your best source of, believe me, I mean, some people call me crazy. I enjoy doing it. I do it once a week, maybe I did it once or twice a week at the most, and it was fun. So I'm wondering whether we could have some outreach. I know there's a retired teachers association. Maybe somebody, Olga or you, could maybe speak to them.
Okay.
Just because it doesn't mean they're gonna have to do it every day, because that's why you're retired. But they are a great source. They know what they're doing. We pay more.
To be honest.
Yeah, honest, yeah. So, I mean, it's just a suggestion that there's a source of teachers out there. They may be retired, but they can still do it some of the time.
I believe I'm hearing from the board that they would like to have a report returned at a later meeting with recommendations from the HR department about how to improve the condition of substitute work in this district overall, whatever that includes.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good way to summarize your report today. Ask Kat to come back with recommendations on how to improve the substitute conditions.
And
in this
get
district.
feedback from the subs, find out how the subs are feeling about us.
Okay.
Get some feedback, yeah.
That could be part of the report.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hold on, guys.
He is here, so we go back to 8A.
Yes.
Dave, can we go back to 8A now then?
Absolutely.
Excellent.
You want to come up and make the introduction, please?
Okay, we're going to move to 8A, report on general obligation bond program and proposal to issue bonds. Dave is reporting.
All right. Good evening, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Barr. So, I'm sure you're all aware, back in 2016, the voters of the school district had voted to approve Measure B. Time is a bond that's intended to build a new school at Santana Ranch. So, as we've gone, moving forward in the process of, purchase the land, we now have a contract to build the school. We have actually started making payments on that contract as some of this work has begun. We now need to issue bonds to pay for that school. So back in 2017, we did issue, of the $36 million that was approved in Measure B, we issued $12 million of that. And we've already started drawing that down to pay for construction of the new school. So now we need to issue the remainder, so it's $24 million of bonds in Measure B to finish the rest of the construction. So who I have with us today is Dave Olson. He is from PFM Financial Advisors. He's our financial advisor through this whole process. So he kind of walks with us the whole, every step of the way, from initial planning all the way through post-sales and even beyond that a bit with continuing disclosure. So I'll turn it over to Dave Olson and he will explain a little bit further.
Great. Thank you very much, Gabe, members of the board. Thank you for your flexibility. I'm sorry to be late tonight. So as Gabe indicated, next month, the board will be asked to consider a resolution authorizing the sale of $24 million worth of bonds. That issuance will exhaust the 2016 Measure V authorization and provide funds for the Santana Ranch School. Tonight, I wanted to provide some background information that is intended to provide context for how some of the decisions that are baked into the resolution arrived at, and I think hopefully reassure the board that the financing plan is reasonable and well thought out and consistent with representations that were made to the voters at the time of the election. So kind of big picture, the bond program here, district has been issuing bonds and spending bond money actively since November 2014 when the voters approved Measure M by a 63.4% in favor. 2016 voters approved Measure V at 65%, so there's a lot of enthusiasm for these projects, a lot of support for the projects. You've completed projects, you've brought in tax rates below the targets. We even issued refunding bonds to save taxpayers a little bit of money the last time that we issued bonds. There are no similar opportunities this time, but it's been very successful to date. This slide describes the bond issues. 2 occasions you'll see in the left-hand column, April 2015, March 2017. 4 series of bonds. The 2017 issue included the second series of Measure M and the first series of Measure V and the refunding bonds. So you can see all of Measure M has been issued and 12 out of the 36 million of Measure V.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes.
So on your left side, refunding bonds issued in March 2017 to reduce taxpayer obligations. So what does that mean?
That means a refunding bond issue is it's like a refinancing of your mortgage. So the district has existing obligations under a 1997 authorization, as well as these 2 most recent. And if interest rates are lower than when you originally issued bonds, you can sell what they call refunding bonds. You use the proceeds to repay the existing bonds, and to the extent that debt service, the repayment obligations are below on the refunding bonds are below what they were on the bonds being refunded, that becomes taxpayer savings in future years. So if you're able to reduce $1 million payment to $900,000 every year, then every year for the next 10 years, taxpayers are saving $100,000.
That does not result in less funds being available to us to spend. Is that correct?
That's correct. We talk about new money bonds. Those are the bonds that produce new money that you can do projects with. When we issue refunding bonds, that's an entirely different transaction. It doesn't create any new money, doesn't create any additional new money, but doesn't take away from your
clearly just refining existing debt.
Yes.
Okay.
If Mr. Olson would permit me, but if I could, one way to look at it is that when the taxpayers oblige themselves to support through a general obligation bond, it's the amount of money which is granted to the school district for their facility projects, and then the public through their ad valorem on their properties pay that debt off. So if I might, I don't want to misquote myself in any way here, Mr. Olson. If refunding takes place, it's an assistance to the taxpayers. It reduces the debt service that will be obligated to the property owners and in their property tax each year. No change to the amount of money which is left to the school district. It just gives a lower repayment system. It is like refinancing your home at a lower interest. In the long run, you're going to pay off less money.
Okay, no, I'm just looking for an extra $5 or $6 million to pay for
I know, for the
gym. That's not going to come from these kids. So, So the district has issued bonds, but has some needs remaining, right? We need to close out existing projects and complete the Santana Ranch School. One of the things we look at is over what period of time are you spending the money? Federal tax law requires we spend all the money from each new issue within 3 years. With an opening date of January 2021, we're obviously going to do that. One thing I do want to notice that the completion of those projects will require some state matching funds, right? Where there's this is the $24 million is not going to guarantee the completion of the project at the scope we have. So we're recommending, and the resolution will reflect a $24 million size. We've examined the cash flow and taken a look at the expenditure requirements. This is a acceleration of the program. The program was originally intended to bring in $12 million in 2017, $12 million in 2019, $12 million in 2021. Before we do that, we want to make sure that we're taking into account, right, the expenditure requirements and the timing of that, whether we can make it in terms of the tax rates. We'll look at that in a little bit. But we did want to do as large an issue as we can to save on costs of issues.
I have a question. Your third bullet point there, under federal law, the district must reasonably expect to expend 85. What happens if we don't?
Well, there's a variety.
What are the penalties?
There's a level of penalties to that, I'll just start at what you would do as a practical matter. Would you continue to expend those monies and count on the reasonable expectations test? So you'd say, it was a reasonable expectations, we'll move on to spend the money.
Gotcha.
What can happen is in an audit situation, the IRS can come in and say, you spent the money over 5 years. That causes us to question whether your expectations were reasonable, and then it escalates from that point.
If I might again, you might have to remember that these are bonds as opposed to, stocks and bonds. People purchase bonds because they have a stronger guarantee of the interest return to them, as opposed to a fluctuating stock that may return a higher amount or lesser amount. And so and some of them are even tax-free bonds. And so in this case, they're interest bearing. People who buy these bonds, if we agree on the issuance of the next, somebody will buy those bonds and they will be paid interest on the money that they bought over the time. So if we don't use it, number one, IRS jumps in and wants to know how come they're being able to buy bonds that are not being used for the purpose that they were stated on the ballot. And the second one is, they will look at your district as possibly doing an arbitrage. They're thinking that your district is actually investing, issuing the bond, taking the money, and then not building the building, putting it in the bank and earning interest and deferring the promise that you made to the public. Those are the consequences that you have in that type of thing.
Right.
So,
how bonds work in California, every dollar of interest that you earn on this borrowed money can go to projects. So they don't want to see somebody say, hey, I'm going to borrow $10 million today to do a project 30 years from now.
Gotcha.
So you've approved bonds, we've spent the money, we are looking at additional costs, and we're recommending a sizing of $24 million, and we're recommending a sizing that will call for closing by the end of March. That's based on a number of factors. Interest rates are relatively good. The district desires to have proceeds prior to the end of the fiscal year, and it's kind of fit with what we've done in the past. We're authorizing bonds in January, sell in March or April. This is a kind of.
So that's my big question. When do the cash disbursements, the serious cash disbursements, when are we actually expecting them to occur? I mean, the reason I ask is it takes a long time. I mean, we're not even through DSA, are we? I mean, right? So when do you expect a shovel to a reasonable expectation that we'll be doing the golden shovel thing? And my point being is, it seems like doing all of this at once and starting that interest thing for the taxpayer on the whole enchilada, I don't know, it's been sort of bugging me that, I know you say it's to save money, but can't we do this in like a shelf registration style where you know, you do all the underwriting and everything like that, but we're only drawing down 1/3 this year, 1/3 next year, and 1/3 the final month.
How we spread out, if we wanted to spread out the access to the funds, we do separate bond issues, as we've done in the past, so.
Right, but does each one require underwriting?
Each one requires it.
They don't do
underwriting,
shelf
so
registration?
They don't do, something, like a line of credit type of financing that would only start when you draw is not a common form of financing.
Just one more input then too, that while I totally agree with Mr. Panowski, you don't want to oblige the taxpayers to begin paying this off at a pretty long distance before you actually start to use it, even within the 3-year period of time. But for me, even a bigger issue is what everybody does, is tries to guess the market. Money is a commodity, and it is marketed every day, both in stocks and in bonds. And in this case, a school district's desire is to try to get the greatest, the greatest amount of money, the least amount of money it will cost them to issue that bond. It costs to issue bonds. And so we should be concerned with interest rate. I would be asking Mr. Olson that, is this the best time for the interest rate for us to issue the bond? Is there, I know you can't read the crystal ball. Is it going to be better 3 months from now? Should we have done it 3 months ago, today, or 3 months from now, or 6 months from now? I know nobody can do that. Everybody's guessing where the economy is going to go. But it's important for us to try to get the best deal we can in selling the bonds, which will net us the most amount of money.
Yes.
Is that also fair, Mr. Olson?
Oh, I think that's very fair. We want to have the construction program drive the issuance schedule, and you can sell this bond and spend it within 3 years, so it meets the federal test. Whether there's another test you want to meet is another matter. And in terms of interest rates, we want to, we'd be more apt to sell the bonds if we think the interest rate market is good.
So
Like
just
Dr.
like
Barr said,
confirm
I don't have a crystal ball, but I have a rear view mirror, and we're as low as we've been in the last year at this point. We're about 40 basis points below where we were in November. So it appears from a rear view mirror standpoint, to be a good time in the interest rate.
Well, I've never heard one guy ever say any time was a bad time. Yeah, I mean, so, but if it's okay with the board, can you just hear from John what he thinks the disbursement schedule could be, I mean, based on what you know today?
Sure, so as Mr. Olson mentioned, we've already drawn $12 million. So the $12 million is pretty much our starting money. So we do have monies to get the project started. And as you know, we submitted 2 increments to DSA, a civil package, which is more or less your earthwork, and then the construction package, which is more or less your buildings. We're hoping that we can get DSA approval by springtime. And if that's the case, then we can actually start, as you say, put shovels in the ground, because we do already have monies from our first issuance. The contract with auto construction, it does have a payment schedule aligned to it. So we will have to have those additional funds as the construction starts moving quicker and quicker. So this is our way of getting those funds so that we don't have any delay in a payment forthcoming.
So just so I can put it in my calendar, when are we doing the golden shovel?
I wish,
again, I don't have a crystal ball either.
Well, we don't have, but we don't know, because DSA, we've just submitted to DSA on January 4th. And we're going to put some amendments on it after you review the additions that have all been requested at your next board meeting, very likely. So we're going to be into February before we can even submit the amendments, and it's probably going to be 90 days before it comes out of DSA, then through the CDE, and then out. We will be lucky if we drive the shovel in August, I guess.
Okay, so
I guess that would be a really wonderful thing if you could drive the shovel in August.
So this is exactly my concern, because you're looking for a March issuance. And my guess is we're not going to need that money until 2020, maybe January 1st. But if we're not doing construction.
My rebuttal, Mr. Bernowski, would be, I understand, you're right on all counts, unless the interest goes up between now and August.
Right, right.
You
I have a question.
you wouldn't net as much money to the district. If you waited until you drive the shuttle, but the interest rate go up 50 basis points or 100 basis points.
If we go into recession, which they're predicting, interest rates will come down. I mean, who knows? So
And the feds have jacked the interest rate up, what, 4 times in the last 12 months?
Yeah.
None of us are crystal balls, you know,
So I'm trying to understand, I don't really have a brain for this information, but I'm understanding what you're saying. And my question is, so it sounds like with timing, this would be the appropriate time to put, and because of the interest rate, and I know none of us have a crystal ball, but here's my question is, so if we waited, and is this again a crystal ball question, if we waited, what's the repercussion or what could be the consequence if we waited? And why would we wait is another question. I mean, we're gonna use this money anyways, right? We have Santana Ranch coming, why would we wait?
The one reason you would wait is that the interest rate starts accruing on the date that you borrow the bonds. So the interest rate, you pay interest a little bit longer if you borrow a little bit earlier. You pay interest a little bit more if rates are higher, a little bit less if rates are lower. One concrete factor that we look at as we do our analysis, and you'll see further in, is we want to see, can you spend the money within 3 years? We check that box off. Can we issue the bonds at this time and this interest rate without exceeding what we told taxpayers it would cost? And we check that box. So in terms of, is it affordable, right? We know we can do it now. The future is uncertain, so but the choice of when to issue the bonds is entirely up to us.
And the length of time for issuance, by the time you put out the prospectus and put it on the market and go onto the open market on the day of issuance, what do you project that to be?
I always describe it as being 60 days from the approval and concept, which is what we're doing tonight, and the dollars in the bank, 60 to 90 days.
Dr. Barr, just to correct, you're proposing we don't go to open market, you're doing a private sale here, correct?
We will sell the bonds in the public market, and a negotiated sale, a negotiated sale describes the way that you sell the bonds to the public market. So the Vanguards and the Franklin funds will be the people buying the bonds, and the bonds will be tradable in the public market. But we'll hire an underwriter up front in order to make that sale.
Okay, somewhere in this presentation, it's indicated like you're just gonna go to Wells Fargo, I think that's who we did this before, but anyway.
Well, we hire an underwriting firm to place the bonds with investors and establish the interest rates, and we negotiate the rates with them. But we are not giving them an exclusive right to buy the bonds. They are distributing the bonds to the investor bank, and they can be individuals, SMAs, the small local investors are relatively big buyers these days.
There's two sides to this. Once the board, once the people pass the bond and it goes to the board and make the decision, the financial advisor is calling as the school district and making sure that you get the best deal you possibly can and issue in time. The financial advisor actually recommends or turns it over to an investment banking firm, including the large banks, like some that were mentioned. They include investment banking in their portfolio. Some smaller entities are actual investment bankers that do nothing but the selling of issuances of these types of portfolios. So there will be an investment banker. They will put it on the open market. It does go up for sale. There is a prospectus. It does go open in the market. You often see individuals buy it, and they, in fact, in the prospectus, it will say how much. We're going to sell this in increments of $100,000, or maybe lower in $50,000. So we're not talking about people just going in and buying $2,000 worth of stock in this. They are sold in increments of usually $10,000 and up. And so many people are buying $100,000 packages, 5 $100,000 packages, 10 $250,000 packages, and they're usually big entities. Some of them are insurance companies, like State Farm, and there is insurance. So, but it's not really our concern who buys them. They're all people who are looking at buying a bond that will return them the most amount of interest. And we're looking at trying to get the lowest interest that we can possibly get it at, so it ends up being more money
I
to
look
us.
forward to bidding on the bonds or bidding on one. I don't think they're gonna be, but again, my whole point about this developer notes is I just don't wanna borrow the money a year ahead of time because I don't, we should be betting on interest rates and, I have my own opinion on that, but, to borrow the money, let's say a year in advance, I don't know what it is, to me would be not wise to, the taxpayers. So, that was my.
I agree with that. I agree. You shouldn't burden the taxpayer earlier than is necessary.
Yeah, so.
So are you suggesting, we're looking at 24 million, right, is what they were?
That's what this issue is. We
Right.
just borrowed an additional 12.
Right.
I mean, right, yeah.
So are you
It's got to be a little
suggesting that we just take 12 out and leave 12 in?
If we don't need this money
Right.
before 2020, and again, I don't know what the timetable is, I would rely solely on John for that. I'd say, let's just, think about it. We have a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
We're discussing it now, it comes back in
Right.
March.
We could take instruction there. So I wanted to make clear kind of the thought process in working through. We will see a district that's achieved an authorization and has spent money and is making an inquiry, has projects to do. So we make a recommendation in terms of sizing, which we think getting all the $24 million makes sense. Right, that reduces upfront costs of issuance. I feel strongly about that. And the timing, we're recommending the spring for the reasons that I stated there. The interest rates are relatively strong now. We want to have money by the end of the school year is the instructions that I have, and that we kind of have been used to this issuance schedule. But that schedule can be delayed, and that's certainly an
And what is, John,
intelligent point.
what is driving by the end of the school year, the fiscal year? You're talking June 30?
And that may be just my conversations with the district because of the summer expenditures. They have additional money in time for summer expenditures.
And by the way, if interest rates rise up and we go into recession, things would cost less, then we could ask them to rebid the contracts, right? So there's another crystal ball,
You mean the building contract?
Right, exactly.
John Talia. What would you estimate the first financial obligation for the district to be if things run smoothly through the DSA, through the CDE, we get permitted? Breaking ground was my estimate of, I think you and I talked one time, we were hoping that we could begin this project in the summer of 19. Was that correct? Or is that too early? Was it January of 19? When was the first time we would break ground and we could then expect a few months later to have to pay our first installment to our building contractor?
We've already paid our first installment to the building contractor per our contract with them. That was with the 70% plans. Once the DSA approves the 100% plans, then we have our second installment payment to the building contractor. And then from there, there's a payment schedule that will be developed over the period of time for the entire project. Our intent is to have shovels in the ground in April. Again, we broke up the package, the design package, and presented it to the DSA. So we wouldn't include everything in one time. We wanted to get the civil or the earthwork in first. Seems to be a little bit easier for them to review that package. We've already got their initial comments back, which is a great sign. As soon as we get approval from DSA on that point, then we could actually start doing work, turning some dirt out there sooner than waiting for the entire package of the building to come in.
Which would then mean we would have an installment due.
That's correct, yes.
So give us a framework, like of the 12 million, how much was the first payment?
It was a little over $2 million.
Okay, so now we're down to 10. What's the second payment?
A little over $2 million.
So now we're at 8, okay.
So I will tell you by contract, the school is to be opened and ready for use on January 5th, 2021. So we just work our way backwards. But I mean, we can look at what the payment schedule would be with the builder so that we would have that timing, if that made a difference, and looked at the bonds at that point.
No, I just, me personally, I just either need you, Gabe, Dr. Barr, or Sue, Mr. Ochoa to say, yes, this has to happen. Now it's not imprudent, to do it. I'm just used to everything working very slow. And again, I don't want to burden the taxpayer too early or unnecessarily to incur those interest costs.
I think what I want to hear, I hope that the board would want to hear, is that our current reserve of bond that we still hold will be depleted, and we will need more at a certain time in the future. And I will take that date and recommend to the board, to me, Mr. Ochoa, we'll take that date and back it up to the 90 days that Mr. Olson here is talking about. And that would dictate to me the logical time of issuance, notwithstanding our look at the crystal ball. Just in terms of timing and not wanting to burden the taxpayers too much, how much money do we have in the bank? What do we owe? When are we going to deplete that pot? When are we going to need another installment to refill that pot? And it's just in time to make the next installment. That's cutting it pretty close, but that's the timeline that we're looking at. That's the PERT chart, if you will. And I think Mr. Olson's correct. 60 to 90 days from direction from the board to final issuance and seeing the bank transfer the money to this district. So that's my goal would be for you to give us that best guess. I know that's not your job, Mr. Olson. It's our job as a district to try to work with our contractors, and working with DSA and the State Department of Ed is not a perfect science either. And so we're doing some guesswork here, but we should guess a little bit on the side of caution that we're a little ahead of them. We're not playing it so close that we can't pay a bill. That's not right. So we should make that issuance, probably 30 to 60 days before we think our payment will due, to give us a little comfort zone. And we're not taking advantage of the taxpayers in that instance. In fact, the taxpayers do not begin paying the month you issue. It's assessed at the next go round of tax bills, which is December and April. So if we issued in July, the taxpayers would not see it until their December and April payment for their 1920 installment on their homes, which we forgot to mention that. So it doesn't burden them immediately. It's placed onto their next tax statement. So,
well, one way or another, they're paying it, but
yeah, they are paying the interest of it.
Yeah, but again, just from the fundamental point of view, the board members is, this is a teachable moment where, again, we're being asked to get into debt, yet we're not crystal clear on what the disbursement needs are yet, and that's my big issue. But I promise I'm going to keep my mouth shut on this topic.
No, this is a very good question and a worthwhile discussion to have, right? Sizing and timing are the base of the recommendation. That's the basis of the timing recommendation. That doesn't answer every question, right? So, but a few things that I would like to mention is we don't want to be running to zero on the existing authorization. That's kind of pretty close. Two is we probably would want to have something on the 2019-20 tax levy in any case, because if we pay back the bond sooner, that reduces taxpayer costs over time, as we'll see. So that's those are two factors that I think are worth considering, and I'll move pretty quickly through the rest. Recommendation reflects a number of notable considerations that we're moving through these bonds a little more quickly. That's reducing the project cost. Hopefully, we don't know exactly what project costs, but project costs tend to go up over time. That the projected tax rates will be below targets, given a reasonable projection for tax-based growth. So we've built our models around a 4% tax-based growth, and our debt service is going to increase by 4% for several years, but 2% in the out years. So we ought to be below our original targets. We've been below our targets so far, and that bonds can be issued without exceeding the statutory bonding capacity. You're pretty close to your bonding capacity, and I want to talk a little bit about that. In terms of the acceleration of issuance, we had a pretty simple program that we're going to issue bonds in spring of 2017, 19, and 21, 12 million per shot. This would bring in the money a little bit sooner, allow us to do projects a little bit quicker, get them to students a little bit quicker, get into the construction market before rates rise. What's allowed us to do it at tax-based growth, you can see it's that at least since 2014-15, been pretty strong, right? We build a projection around 4% growth and we get 8% growth, and that's what allows us to do things a little faster and a little bit below what our tax rate projections are. But you can see also that it's uncertain, right? We've had some bad years of AV growth. In terms of actual tax rate, I want to be nice and slow on this one. As Dr. Barr said, these bonds are repaid by property tax rates in the future. You can see this sets up the tax rates by authorization. I'm not sure what the original tax rate target was for the 97 bonds, but you can see that tax rates have been going down. We're $7 per 100,000 of assessed value last year. The 2014 Measure M, we told voters at the time of the election, we expected the tax rates to be below 28.50. All 4 years, they've been below 28.50. We told 2016 Measure V that they'd be below 28.50. They've been below 28.50 in each of those years. We like to see them declining because that's opening up capacity for future bonds too. We don't want what we're doing today to adversely affect board members 10 years from now and 20 years from now. So we developed estimates, we're meeting our estimates. In terms of projected tax rates, this is a little bit difficult to read, and I'm not sure what the beige bars are for, but the blue bars are the first $12 million issues, and the green bar is the repayment on the Series B, projected repayment on the Series B, and the red line is what we'd be able to collect at $30, which is the maximum under Prop 39. So you can see as we go out through time that we ought to be a lower and lower percentage of the maximum. So we ought to see a tax rate that declines right from the $25, $26 level that it is now down to the $18, $20 level, and even lower if we get good tax-based growth. So we can do it within our tax rate targets.
Does everybody on the board understand what Mr. Olson is talking about why the tax rate to taxpayers would decrease over time? Because the AVs, assessed values, increase. When more development comes into the city and the turnover. With Prop 13, the old Prop 13 tax increase stays the same as long as a single person owns the home. When it turns over, property, when the property turns over, it is assessed at its new market value. As turnover occurs in properties and or new development occurs, there's a larger overall assessed value to the jurisdiction divided by our indebtedness. It's divided over a larger population. The property, what am I trying to say? The tax assessment, tax rate assessment to each property will decrease. So the larger the size, the lower the tax increase. So
as a percentage, not absolute dollars.
Right, the rate,
Yeah.
the rate, because it's spread out over a larger population.
Right, and to your point, when you borrow your mortgage, you borrow level payments over 30 years. In school bond finance, we typically escalate the payments in order to get a little bit more upfront, and we count on growth in the tax rate, tax base. You can see the green and blue is going up a little bit over time. That's a little bit more aggressive than you would do with your mortgage. But we also have under Prop 13, we have reason to believe that the property tax base will increase even as property values level off because homes get reassessed. There's a lot of bank data, many homes in this area are assessed at below their market value. So as they turn over, we ought to get growth even without increase in property values.
Just to give you an example, in 2008, when the recession really started and all the property values went down, the tax assessors in each county had to actually exceed the legislated maximum that the district could get because they didn't have enough value to do it. They actually had to go over that $30 for $100,000 assessed value because they didn't have enough to draw from because the values dropped so badly. We're hoping that values go the other way.
That's why we want to lower the escalation if we can. There is a bonding capacity in terms of the amount of bonds we can issue. California state law limits you can't issue bonds if by issuing those bonds you cause the amount of total bonds outstanding to exceed 1.25% of your tax base. So you can see here a $5 billion tax base, a $65 million bonding capacity. We have $40 million worth of bonds outstanding now. So 25.6, we have 24 to do. We're right up against our bonding capacity. The bottom chart there, the estimated annual increases say, does that mean that we're always going to be constrained moving into the future? And the answer is not necessarily, because every year that the tax base grows, we're going to get additional bonding authority. And every year we pay down debt, we're going to get a little bit additional bonding capacity. That's one of the reasons we definitely want to make a payment in 2019-20 so that we can put bond payment behind us.
What's our credit rating, correct? I mean, there's different factors when you're going out to sell your bonds, soliciting, buyers. But our credit rating and our capacity to pay our bills is also.
Right, you'll borrow at a lower cost with a higher credit rating. And our credit rating has been A+ in the past from S&P, I think AA3 from Moody's. And that we'll develop a credit rating strategy. I can go into more detail as we come the next time, but we're planning on having a meeting with them in February. We're going to have to talk with the whole financing team, regroup, and talk about whether we want to adjust the schedule based on some of the discussion tonight. Let me say again, one of the reasons we like to present the financing plan before we present the financing resolution, and I used to do it differently, is that we want to have time to be transparent about our processes and take some feedback from the board and the public, right? So we want to be making a good decision that everyone believes in.
Right, I just wanted to add that the credit rating changes from day to day. It's just like any one of us. I mean, if we went out to borrow money, we would probably have our credit rating checked, and it could change from day to day depending on our circumstances. And it's the same way with the school district. Before any issuance occurs, that the investment banking firm has to put the prospectus out and has to go get a credit check for you. They have to use Moody or one of those kinds of credit ratings who will place a credit rating on you. And our staff will be asked to fill out a lot of different kind of forms, in terms of, do we pay our bills? It's hard when it's a public agency as compared to a private.
But Dr. Barr, to be clear, the credit rating is really on the taxpayer, the property taxpayer of San Benito County. I mean, again, if we were, doing the various things, it might, but it's all on the quality of our ability to receive property taxes on the schedule that you're referring to, right?
That's right. It's actually a little bit surprising, and you would very much expect it to be exactly like you described. But the district's finances play a role in the credit rating, even though it has very small role in your ability to repay. And one of the reasons why they do that is they want to make, the Moody's and Standard & Poor's, they have portfolio, they rate a portfolio of school districts across the nation, and they want to have a standard that they can apply across. And in California, we complain that we don't get enough credit for the very thing that you described, that these bonds are good to go, right? As long as there's properties with value here, we're going to be able to repay the debt. But most of the downgrades are caused by poor financial performance.
They do look at beyond your school district. They ask you questions about your community, about your unemployment rate, about the number of big industries in your area. They want to make sure that your district is going to continue to be fiscally sound. And there's a lot of exterior mitigating factors that go into that.
Stability of district management.
Slide that's going to show 2011 to 2012 here, right? Value of the property. We trowel in 2012.
Right, we showed that back here.
There. So 2012-13 is when we hit the trowel.
But there are many school districts that are below that are just getting to their pre-Great Recession level, and you're well in advance of that. So we feel good about where we are in the Hollister. But so the issuance process involves kind of 5 overlapping steps. You authorize the bonds, the board authorizes their sale. We draft and distribute the offering document, the prospectus that Dr. Barr was talking about. We develop and implement a rating strategy, and we establish interest rates with, in this case, on a negotiated basis. I'll try to explain that as well as I can here. And then we sign the closing documents. So all those kind of overlapping processes, it takes 60 to 90 days. The financing resolution that'll be in front of you authorizes the sale of bonds subject to certain terms and conditions, including a not to exceed issue size, not to exceed repayment term. It establishes the basic mechanics for the bond issue and our interest payment dates, right? How our property tax is collected. It approves certain documents as to form. I'm slow on that. So there are some backup documents. The preliminary official statement, the big prospectus, is approved as to form. That's a board responsibility to have seen that, even though it's in draft by the time it gets to you. A bond purchase contract, what are the, right? They'll have blanks in it, but you approve that as to form. And it certifies certain commitments that you will comply with the rules on an ongoing basis. So there's a continuing disclosure obligation, there's an arbitrage rebate obligation. All of those are referenced in the resolution, and those are things that your financial advisor may helps make sure you stay on top of. But as long as the bonds are outstanding, you need to be taking these actions to comply with these rules. Those are all mentioned in that. A negotiated sale. So bonds can be sold by a competitive or negotiated sale. In a competitive sale, we put the bond issue together, bond counsel and me and the district's finance team, and we tell the underwriters, the Raymond James and Stifel and Morgan Stanley and Barclays, we tell those firms, hey, give us your best interest rate on this debt. And we take bids and we award to the lowest rate. In a negotiated sale, we choose an underwriter in advance, and we say, we'll select you and we'll negotiate the interest rate with you. In California, about 85% of the issues are sold by negotiated sale. One of the reasons is Stanley's of the world are good marketers, right? They're out there talking to people. But another reason is in this current market that the amount that you pay the underwriter is a little bit lower on a negotiated sale. We'll probably end up paying $2, $3, or $4 a bond, or somewhere around up to $96,000 for this whole issue. And that's relatively low versus a competitive sale where they bid on it and the underwriter firm will build in a little bit higher spread because they don't have the bonds sold. So that over that course of the time, the market may change. They tend to charge a little bit higher rate in terms of dollars per bond. The advantage of a competitive sale is it's a more transparent process. The disadvantage in today's market is it's it's probably a little bit more expensive. So the existing plan is to interview 2 firms on the 28th. Hear proposals from them, both firms that have a good record of doing bonds in California, and making a recommendation that will be built into the resolution. These are an estimated cost of issuance. So you pay a financial advisor, a bond counsel firm, a disclosure counsel firm who puts together the disclosures, the rating agencies. You notice that the cost of the rating agency can be $20,000 per firm. Those are a not to exceed amount. And the guarantee that I make you is that you'll have a report showing all issues within the last 6 months that have been in size between $15 and $30 million, or enough to get 12 reasonably sized. Each of those categories, you'll be median or below. The state treasurer makes that information available, and we make that part of our practice. The issuance schedule, the proposed issuance schedules, make our presentation tonight, approve a board resolution on the 28th. Between now and then, have a rating agency meeting. Again, everything this schedule will be re-looked at in light of the idea of when the financing is intended to close. We don't want to have the rating meeting more than a month before the sale, or a month and a half. Concluding thoughts. Did I spell that right? Everybody ready for me to conclude? Thank you for the time. I appreciate it, but as a result of the 2 recently approved bond measures, the district facilities are in reasonably good shape and the district is prepared for future growth. That's great. District has met its target in terms of the pace of expenditures. You're getting the projects to your citizens faster than we originally projected. The bond structure is relatively conservative, so we expect to be able to meet our tax rate commitments going into the future. I did want to mention the existing pace of the facilities program is not sustainable at current levels.
Could you explain that a little bit?
Okay,
I
so-
don't quite understand that.
You've approved, $60 million worth of bonds since 2014. By 2020, in those 6 years, you'll have spent it all. You're spending money at about $10 million per year. You can't spend $10 million a year on your facilities forever and ever because your tax base is not big enough to allow it under the existing bonding capacity.
I see.
So the idea of coming down to moving to I think this school district ought to be spending money on its facilities on a regular and ongoing basis, but the pace needs to probably move from $10 million per year down to a lower figure. Whether that be 4, 6, 8, depending on growth, we'd have to see. But this $10 million per year, we need to think of this as a bulge, right? Where we met a lot of our needs in order to prevent somebody from having to cover that bulge in the future, right? I talk about the boards 10 years from now, 20 years from now. We ought to be doing some work every year on an ongoing basis.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So can I ask one more question?
You said you weren't.
But, so the voters passed this bond measure and we saw the assessment, the bond measure show up on our most recent property tax bills, I believe, right?
Yes.
First issuances.
That's only for the first issuances. So once we do this, we're gonna see that assessment go up. Is that correct?
We actually have structured the bonds, and I'm not sure if it's easy to see. It's not easy to see on this. We've structured the bonds so that the payments on the Series A under Measure V produce these mid-$20 tax rates, and then it dropped to accommodate this next issuance of bonds. So the tax rate, so if we say something like, if we built a program that's designed to pay $4 million a year in debt service for the program wide, we'd sell the Series A, 4 million, 4 million, 1 million.
No, let me put it personal. So if I, just for conversation's sake, on my most recent tax bill that I got, or assessment, whatever, there's $100 on there for Hollister School District on all of them together, right? So once we do this issuance, will it now be $110 for the Hollister School District?
What I would expect.
Or whatever.
We carved it out. It will be slightly higher, but it will not be another $20 higher. So this tax rate, if I can say this tax rate, if we don't issue bonds, this tax rate will be $6 next year.
Okay.
Because we built it to be 25, 25, 6 for a number of years because we wanted the next one to be 19 from the Series B so that the program together, A and B, would fit together to have a $25 tax rate.
Is that part of what's driving this though, is because we don't want to see people's property tax bills go down because of this and then.
That's not a big driver, but if we delay the sale, that would be something that came into my mind. That's not a reason why we're bringing the sale to you today. We're bringing the sale because you can spend the money within 3 years. You can do it within your tax rate and your bonding capacity, and interest rates are relatively low. But if this sale were to drag on beyond the summer, it would be a factor that I would start to consider, yes.
You could, okay. Thank you.
And thank you very much. I appreciate everybody's time.
Well, thank you.
Those
You
were
did a
great.
great job.
Great questions. We really are trying to build a program that is transparent and that's fair to current and future taxpayers and meeting the targets that they're told at the time of the election. One thing I didn't point out on the schedule is that we're planning on meeting with the county treasurer to get a third-party input, let them know what we're doing. A lot of times school district financings are criticized by the county treasurers, and we don't want that to happen. We want them to know what we're doing and approve of what we're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. When we take a look at these, we kind of look at the totality of the circumstances. We want to make a decision that's right for, the taxpayers and the district and, sort of everyone involved. And, one thing I want to point out, it was on the last slide here. where it says, the existing PACE facilities program is not sustainable, current tax levels, and absent a waiver from the State Department of Ed, district will face bonding capacity constraints in the future. So really the importance of that is, as you saw earlier on in the presentation, we will be at our bonding capacity after this. So if we start seeing growth as we're seeing it now, we're no longer going to be able to go out for bonds to build a school. So this is really where, it's important that, especially the city and the county board of supervisors, they need to bring us in when they're approving these developments, because we're going to need, we're going to need to be at the table to make sure that the school district is getting what we need to serve our students. And, in the past, that's been a little bit of an issue, so we need to make sure that that's happening moving forward.
Well, we already heard from our mayor. He said no more bonds. He came, last Monday, wasn't it, when we had the meet and greet?
Yeah.
That was one of the first things he said. Don't pass any more bonds. Hollister can't afford it.
But you're right, Gabe. I think the conversation still, we need to approach the city and county and place ourselves on the agenda. I know Dr. Tenenbaum, he and I were just having that conversation as far as Mr. Choi and himself making themselves available to go to these meetings and saying, look, we gotta work together. You guys are making decisions that are gonna drastically impact our schools. People wanna come here, but they wanna come to a community where we have exceptional schools. We will not be able to meet those conditions at the rate of growth that we are expanding.
Absolutely.
And were there things on the books? Yes. But are there still conversations that can be had? I don't know. I mean, maybe. But, a lot of these developers, I know when Dr. McIntyre was here, when he talked to them, he'd say that they basically said nobody asked. So that's pretty, disturbing. So if we have to ask, then let's go ask. And we become a thorn in their side if we have to be, at the meetings, so that we can express to them what the impact will be in all of our school districts 5 years from now, 10 years from now, if we're not working together to ensure that
Right.
we're helping each other and
This,
we're not.
this is the most important piece of this whole presentation, is this bonding capacity. And we've got to get the county supervisors and the city council to start working with us, because we're tapped,
Well, and developers too.
right?
Yes.
We're tapped,
Yeah.
yeah, we're tapped.
But I think that's definitely, I was happy to hear Dr. Tenenbaum, it's like, let's go. It's like, I think we're ready to hit that, hit their meetings, just as much as hopefully they would want to hear from all their constituents, including, and especially from our school districts.
I preached as hard to Dr. Tenenbaum as I had to you.
Well, he preached it back to me.
I'm very happy to hear that everything is sinking in and that you all understand how important it is to be included in the impact.
Yeah, the two largest districts in this community have to join forces.
And in terms of PACE also, we also need to make sure that we are seeking every eligible dollar we possibly can from every source known to mankind. We have talked tonight about bonding, but we should also make sure that we are in pipeline with whatever eligibility we possibly can be at this state.
Money coming into the district.
Yes.
Are we?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, 8C, report on the district office departments and district office employee total compensation. This was from our meeting of January 8th, what was requested from January 8th, 2019 meeting. Erica.
Good evening. So we will proceed with the presentation, the report on the district office organization, the structure of the organization. We will be using two handouts. I do apologize. It is mine is full size. I don't know if anybody needs it.
Okay.
Do apologize about that. So the PowerPoint itself is more of an organizational chart with the total salary costs and the total compensation costs, the benefits, which includes statutory benefits and health and welfare benefits. So I will be referring to both documents, the one that looks like this, the little spreadsheet here, and then the actual PowerPoint itself. So the purpose of district office staff, and this is just my opinion, is that we're here to support all school sites, all programs district-wide, to remove all obstacles from student achievement and student learning. That's our to support the school sites. The first section of our organizational chart includes the senior management team headed by our superintendent position. The teal colors are the representatives of the executive cabinet, which make up the council team. And part of our team also includes the principals at all of our school sites. However, the colored boxes are the members of the executive cabinet or council team. As we move forward with the presentation, again, I'll refer to both the handouts. As the board did request a specific breakdown per position and per department. So as we begin, this is the beginning of the Educational Services Department, and the Educational Services branch oversees the Educational Services Department. In all, the total salary for these particular members is in the box, $459,000. The benefits is under $200,000. The purple boxes, Director of Technology and Innovation, the Director of Learning and Achievement, and the Acting Director of Special Education. Their salaries are not included in this particular breakdown because their salaries will be included in their particular departments. Again, this is the Educational Services Department, which is under the branch. The teal boxes here, this is what constitutes educational services. Okay. The instructional coaches are not listed as far as their salaries because they are out at the school sites, and this is not including their salaries. The yellow box, the translator, we are working on hiring. We have assessed all of our candidates, and we will be moving forward with the interview and the selection process in the upcoming week.
So Eric, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
On the instructional coaches, do we direct them from the district office? Or when they're at the schools, the principals direct them? How does that work?
The instructional coaches are directed by Educational Services. They are deployed out to the school sites, and it is the direction of the department by which they operate under.
So they're evaluated and supervised by
centrally by the Educational Services Department.
By Ed Services?
Yes, but they are currently housed at the school site, so I took the literal meaning of staff here at the district office. I did not include them.
So, to get to my point, who basically tells them what their job is at a particular school? Us or the principal?
The central office, the Educational Services.
So we do have control over that?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I need.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I don't know what a principal on assignment is.
We have currently a staff member that has this definition. The principal on special assignment is an administrator with an admin credential that is overseeing various different programs under Educational Services branch. It could vary. It's not something that is specifically tied to a job description. Currently, our principal on special assignment oversees the induction process that we are trying to become certified to become an induction provider. This person also oversees the extension programs and so on.
So just so I'm clear, the teal boxes is what constitutes the total salary up on
Yes.
the top corner.
Yes,
Not the purple, not the gray, not the yellow.
yes, that is
Okay.
correct. Thank you for clarifying. There's also the breakdown on here.
The teeny
We can-
I know, I can't see it.
Sorry about that. Okay, the next department within the Educational Services branch is Technology and Innovation. The total salary is a bit over the $500,000 mark, and the total benefits is about $250,000. It is listed, the total amounts in this box in the corner. All of the members of the technology department, which appear in teal, are housed here at the district office, and their salaries are factored into finding the total amount here. The gray box with the site tech specialist, there's 4 of them. They're at the at the school sites, so their salaries are not factored into this total amount.
Why aren't they factored into the amount?
Because they're housed at the school sites. They each go to 2 school sites, and the report is solely on employees that work here centrally at the district office.
Is this teacher on assignment a permanent position, or how does that work? What is that position? That doesn't tell me anything.
So the teacher on assignment currently is working with technology, and is depending, on what our district's philosophy is moving forward, if it is a position. The current person in this position is a permanent member. However, the position itself depends on what the direction of the district will be in the future. What positions we keep in the budget or we project out onward during budget projections. It is something that we use to support our teachers and our deployment of, different curriculums to allow for professional development between our teacher on special assignment and the different teachers at the school sites.
So this teacher on assignment is based in the district office here and goes out to the
Yes.
school sites? Okay.
Yes.
What's a SIS application specialist?
Student Information Systems Application Specialist. Yes, the org chart itself has many, many acronyms because the boxes are so small. But on the list, even though I realize it is small, the words are spelled out.
Just for my 2 cents worth here again, in my last opportunity to do so, I would suspect that Mr. Cho would be entertaining a conversation with everybody that's involved, especially the council and so forth. But typically, the title principal on assignment and teacher on assignment are short-term in terms of, we have a need, we're gonna pull a principal out of the school, give them a special assignment, and it's typically something that starts out short-term. And then if it turns out to be something that's ongoing, then there's generally a change in a title or something. Teacher on assignment's the same way. We don't typically, my experience, districts don't typically pull a teacher out of the classroom, give them a teacher on assignment for a career.
Yeah, that was my thought. I didn't understand that.
Jennifer knows more about these than I do, but I'm gonna guess that they were originally created to address what we thought might be a current problem this year and maybe next year or something, but they typically don't go forever. They typically morph into some kind of a position, a title, unless the task goes away and then the person is returned to either the classroom or the principalship. So for me, those titles, principal on assignment and teacher on assignment, are typically a little bit more short-term kinds of things, and they either morph into a permanent thing or they go back.
Well, I'll give you a good example. Sometimes you'll identify a teacher at a school and you'll say, you know what, that teacher has leadership capabilities, but they're not quite vice principal yet or principal yet. So the school district can say, you know what, we want to put you on special assignment and learn about testing or, something like that to fill in the gaps while they're adding value, to it. It can be a training ground for, something bigger. I have seen that happen, before, so.
But again,
I like the alarm
temporary.
Huh?
It's temporary, that was my point. the title like that, it made it seem like, well, they're here permanently in the district office. When you say, that's the same, like principal on assignment, let's say a principal leaves in the middle of the year. It used to be somebody from the DO would be the principal until they got another principal for the school. And I assume that's the way that a teacher on assignment works as well. It's not a permanent position.
Typically, in other districts, teachers on assignment, any position on assignment, the OSA is temporary. In our district, historically, we have had one teacher on assignment in educational services that has been a long-term assignment for, I would say, over a decade. It would depend upon the school district desire, the leadership to change a job title, to negotiate if necessary with the bargaining unit, any changes.
That teacher on assignment doesn't seem like a good title to me.
And that,
because if you're a teacher,
sure,
you're in the classroom.
Well, but look, I mean, some insight into this. Like, in general, I won't make any decisions unless I hear, when I say educator, what I mean is a credentialed individual who has that classroom experience, or, you know, whatever. I don't want to discount if we have a teacher on assignment that's here in the district office that is helping the district move along in its mission as an academic, you know, institution. I mean, you know.
I understand your point there, but my point is, again, it's temporary. I could understand the need for that. I did it myself. I was a teacher on assignment over here for a while myself, but it was always understood it was going to be temporary. And as long as that's understood, and we don't have a permanent position that's called teacher on assignment. If that's the case, we need to change the title from teacher, whatever they're doing in the DO. That's what it needs to be changed to.
and that is something we can work towards.
Okay.
Our next department under the Educational Services branch is the Learning and Achievement Department. The salaries that make up the total salary amount are in teal. The yellow is a projected, talked about, a concept that we have been talking about, a coordinator of assessment and accountability. The gray boxes, again, are positions that are housed at the school sites, with the exception of the middle school athletics, that is a stipend bargaining unit position. The other positions are, again, at the school sites. The next department under Educational Services is Special Education and Student Support Services. The teal boxes, again, make up the salary total. The yellow box is a new position that we have talked about. The gray boxes, again, are at the school site supporting our students. The total for the Educational Services branch, I understand that the font is very small. However, it is tallied up here. It's $2,071,862 for salaries, and then $861,934 for benefits. The next section of our district office is the facilities maintenance and operations and transportation side of the building of our house here. We have several different classifications here that help upkeep our facilities. The total for this entire chart here is $856,000, and the salaries are $472,000. The next department that we have here is the Fiscal Services, Student Nutrition, and Warehouse. These are different, again, two different departments that deal with three different topics: Fiscal Services, Student Nutrition, and Warehouse. The total compensation is $736,000, and the benefits is $392,000. And the gray, again, are employees at the school sites.
So Erica, on
Yes.
the facilities maintenance operation.
Yes.
The transport drivers, those are mainly utilized for special education students, right? To take them to our
Yes.
Schools that we
have students placed at non-public
Non-public
schools
schools.
or at other sites. For the most part, these transport drivers do.
So it's not built through special education?
No. Transportation at one point was under special education. A decision was made to have transportation be moved under facilities and maintenance and operations recently.
So going back to our last board meeting, when we were listening to Marilyn Shepherd's presentation, she was using 71 point whatever percent of our special ed is funded through the general fund. So that number is actually even artificially low, the figure she was producing, 72 or whatever it was, right? Because transportation for special ed is a big deal, isn't it?
I do not know what the exact transportation cost is, but it is something that we strive to maintain. If it is something that we are legally obligated to do, we do provide for transportation. The method of payment for these 2 transport drivers that are listed, and we've since hired a 3rd transport driver to meet the needs of the various students going to these placements. I don't know if it's general fund or if it's based out of special ed. Special ed, I'm being told it's special ed.
Okay.
Transportation of special ed students is charged to special ed. It just increases that ratio of what our total costs are to our general fund. Exactly. So I'm gonna guess that if we were at 71, and I don't recall transportation being in that report, so it would increase the amount of encroachment on the general fund.
The total amount for these 3 different sections is $736,000. The last portion is human resources. I do apologize, the comma is misplaced. It's $448,000 and $200,000 for benefits. The numbers are there, the comma's misplaced.
And the vacancy is still encapsulating what that position would.
Yes, and the salary is listed in the 448,000.
What's the vacancy position?
The vacancy position, we originally flew it as an HR analyst to replace an HR analyst that earned a promotion. It's considered a vacancy. I know that there has been discussion as to whether or not we should maintain an HR position, an HR analyst position vacant or not. So I just generically titled it vacancy.
So really then what you're saying is the vacancy, it actually helps the HR manager?
It would help the entire team, more hands on deck, but yes, it would help with day-to-day operations.
Okay.
Because I know with analysts, we generally had one that focuses on certificated needs and one that works on classified.
Yes.
Okay.
How come everybody has a secretary but you?
That is something that we can talk about in the,
Maybe
in
your
the future.
vacancy could be the secretary.
Sure.
Just a thought.
For what it's worth, in my conversations with your superintendent appointee, is that I have spoken to him about organizational structure and that the need to look, and this is really graphic. It really shows you, I think it was a good choice of a program to take a look at. Looking at the various division departments, the number of people that are there, that the more difficult part will be taking a look at a deeper look into each one.
Sure.
And the questions you've just asked Gary about her own department. Is that a separate HR analyst or one and the same? What are the needs? How many people do you need to run the program properly? Mr. Cho will be taking a close look at all of that in all of the departments. And I think this is a great start. This is a great start. You got to know where you are before you can be,
Don't
start
forget
talking about
that.
where you need to go.
Right. Just a question back on the transportation coordinator.
Yes.
I don't know all of our transportation needs. Do we have more needs besides the two transport drivers?
So our transportation coordinator coordinates also our general education transportation of our students. We have a contracted service that provides busing. We also have busing in the summertime that the transportation coordinator coordinates.
So first student is contracted out, they're the ones that
Yes.
provide the service, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so what is her role with first student?
This position helps to create routes, helps to maintain the pickup and drop off locations updated with the bus drivers, helps to issue applications, receive applications for parents, helps to coordinate summer services when we have field trips, helps to coordinate the busing for field trips and so on.
Thank you.
It's a huge job.
Well, yeah, I just, because I know there was one trip that I don't know what happened, but it was a trip for HDLA that was very anticipated, and, you know, Parents Club do a huge job, all parents clubs, to rally parents, fundraise, do all this, to be able to provide different things for their students. And so I don't know where the drop in communication was or whatever. So to me, I just, you know, field trips of that nature, for us not to have a bus and not have a field trip happen, shouldn't be happening.
Sure. I can speak for all the positions, I think, that we've talked
Two different
about.
things. We structure it as well as we can, and then we try to put the procedures in place that make the structure hum. And when the procedure falls down, then issues happen that we don't want to hear about.
Right.
And so, I mean, it's really two parts. We put the structure together that's supposed to operate properly. If some procedure within the structure falls through the cracks, there's gonna be a problem. So there's two parts of it, the structure and the operation.
Right, because I mean, now it's on the obligation of the district to pay for that trip to happen now. Which, I mean, if it was our mistake, by all means, you know, we need to rectify it. But I just want to make sure that if there was an issue with the structure or whatever it was, that it happened. I mean, I know it wasn't on the site because they did everything they needed to do. And I just would hate to see parents and students be upset for, you know, if it would to happen again.
And I think I just wanted to know, because I don't know all that, you know, and I think in respect with our interim superintendent, Dr. Barr, our future superintendent, Mr. Cho, I'm sure he's gonna look further into the details. It's just good to know kind of like what everybody does, and just also respect that these are individuals and they're, you know, there's probably other things we don't know.
I think that, you know, good comments, very good points. I'd like to remind us of the concept that we're here as a district office. Of course, you know, no one comes to work to want to impede on such a special occasion for students. But we're here to support, and I think that each and every employee comes to the district office each and every day with that mindset of we are here to support the work. There is very important work that happens here, but the bulk of the work with our students is at the school site. So I do know that we are working each and every day diligently to provide that best service for our school sites, our administrators, but most importantly for our students.
Well, I'd just like to add that, you know, I don't want to get into any arguments between what's more important, the heart or the brain, but this district has more or less, you know, 560 employees. And any organization that size requires a huge amount of support. It's just like saying school must be the principal, right? All the education occurs in the classroom, it does not. And the employees that are in this office and or, you know, the district office, They are just as important as the teachers in the classroom, the principals, the vice principals. And I hope this wasn't an exercise in, well, just look at how much money we're spending on them. I mean, when something fails here, the whole district hears it. And if we didn't have the high quality employees that we have here, this school district would be a disaster. Because 560 people have to get paid every month, 560 people have to bargain every month or every year. It goes on and on and on. And just like our schools need, improvement from time to time, the district office needs improvement from time to time. But again, I don't know what this exercise, looking at all the numbers and stuff, because I don't have the context, but I just want to make sure that we don't lose sight that any entity this size requires administration. And, I would argue that we don't spend enough in the district office, the beautiful carpet notwithstanding. Thank you.
That was the last department. I don't know if there's any other additional questions.
No, I think it gives us Mr. Ochoa something to look at and gives him help in looking at what we have going here at the district office.
And it is a building for your budget.
Mhm.
This is budget season, January to June is budget
That's
season.
right.
And it starts with people in positions, and then the programs, and then everything else, the equipment and the facilities and so forth. So, this is a good exercise to help you, especially those of you who are new board members and will be looking to develop the budget for the first time, part of how it's built. And so that, it was a good exercise.
Yeah, and it's probably too late this year to start it, but one of the few things that impresses me about the county manages itself is its budget document is different, where every single department, the department head says, here's who we are, this is what we do, here's what we did well last year, these are the problems we need to solve, so that the board of supervisors has the context. Here's why we're budgeting X amount for this, because this is what they're trying to accomplish. And by the way, they haven't been able to accomplish certain things because they asked for money, this area was never funded. It's a pretty comprehensive document, so it seems like we have as many departments as they do, so just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Erica.
Thank you, Erica.
Thank you very much, Erica. We're going to move to the consent items. These items are considered routine and may be enacted by the board in one motion. There is no discussion on these items prior to the motion unless a specific item is removed from the consent list. I have one.
Well, 9G would
We'll
hold.
take the consent items first, and then we'll get the item.
I'll make a motion that we approve items 9A through 9F and 9H.
Let's stop at 9. I need to talk about 9F. Okay, well, all right. I just need an explanation of how this was handled.
I bet Gabe can tell you that.
That's all I'm looking for. I'm not saying don't pay it. This is what I used to do, and I do not understand how an attorney got involved in this.
I got an answer for you.
We gotta hold up.
This is the vehicle is part of it. Okay.
This is consent
Okay.
agenda. We're not allowed to discuss
All right.
items. What I would suggest is that hopefully, after the board approves the consent items, then handles the one item that was asked to be pulled off of it, that you discuss it with him after the meeting. He'll tell you the details of why that happened, and hopefully you'll be satisfied. And if you don't, then you can bring it back to a future item later on.
Right, that's what I was gonna, yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
So I'd like action on my motion.
I will second it.
Okay, I'm just noticing my supervisor down there was saying we haven't had a motion yet, right?
Well, he had a
I made the
motion.
motion.
He made the motion.
I'm sorry.
I will.
Jan seconded.
I second it. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you.
Okay, so
Now the pulled item.
Okay, this is in regard to the carpet,
9G.
9G. And the reason that I asked to have it pulled, there's a a couple of things that I wanted to bring about. I just think there needs to be fairness for all concerned about district rules. And in our, if you're a teacher and you go on a field trip, you have to make sure that you have the board approve your field trip before you go, or you can't go. And here we have this new carpet, and it's over $15,000, and you're asking us to approve it after the fact. And I don't think that's right. And I would just prefer from now on that we do not install anything or do anything on a purchase that's over $15,000 as board policy states until the board approves it, that's all.
So we have rules on that. And what are those rules?
So the board has approved the delegation of authority by allowing the director of facilities to sign agreements and bring them back to the board for ratification within 90 days. So that's the justification for bringing this contract. And a lot of it was timing too. We wanted to get the project done over the Christmas break while everybody was gone. And so therefore, that's why the contract is coming back now.
Well, I'm not aware of that. Were all of you aware of this 90-day thing?
Well, I think we are because, again, you have to look at this from a logistical point of view. If something changes between the last time, we approved it one way or another, and now you've stopped a project like this until our next board meeting. I mean, from a management point of view, that will add more costs as you send the contractor away and they start, doing things. You would have lost use of the room if the project was in process. So I think that you have to allow some leeway.
We don't allow leeway for the teachers. We allow zero leeway for the teachers.
I don't know what you're referring to there.
I'm referring to a field trip. You must get approval for a field trip by the board, or you cannot.
An overnight field trip.
No, any field trip.
No.
50 miles. It's anything that goes 50 miles.
And to go anywhere around here is usually over 50 miles.
Only overnight. Only overnight.
Yeah, it's overnight.
Field trips are approved by the principal. All route kinds of field trips. Overnight trips only come to the board.
It's in all districts, overnights are the only ones
Right.
that come.
I'm sorry, but
That come before the board.
If I may speak, I was denied taking my students to Stanford University because I did not get board approval for taking them beyond 50 miles. We were touring a college campus, and we were an underserved population. No, this was a few, that's why I'm asking, has the rule changed? Because the rule.
Policy changed a few years ago. So it took out the 50-mile radius and then only included the overnight. We have a policy that only involves overnight.
Overnight or out of state.
It used to be overnight and for over 50 miles, now it's just overnight.
Yeah.
And out of state.
Is that
And out of
something,
state.
is that something that I don't know, that everyone is
Aware of?
Like,
No.
does that get posted somewhere, like,
Well,
hey, everyone,
yes.
did you know that this policy changed?
Yes, it does. It's on our website, all of our policies are. But more importantly is, for every board, we're talking about it, but there's a reason the principals are here, so that they can hear what we're doing and what, again, it sounds like somebody might have had bad, information, but again, all of our policies are on, are on the website. So other than that, there might be some communications, issues, perhaps, but I just want to get back to, again, we're a $60 million entity, and we are supposed to approve every contract that goes over certain, but if you're midstream and bringing it to a halt is a bigger detriment, I want us to have faith in professionals in our entity to say, I know it's going over, but if we don't allow it to go, this room might be torn up or. I mean, you know, you have to take a practical, you know, view of things. Remember, we don't run the day-to-day. We set policies. And even then, sometimes you have to say, for something like that, did he in fact go over the policy? He did not. Because up to a certain limit, we can approve things in arrears. I know intellectually that sounds sort of difficult, but they have to run things here.
I think I wanted to ask something. I think I understand that, you know, you have a job to do, you need to get things done. I think that what I would like to know is there like a priority list that you guys have? Like, is there, because I know at the beginning it was mentioned that R.O. Hardin has been waiting to be, I wrote down, painted since 3 years ago. So I would just, that's the only thing I would want to know, is there like a list of things, and I'm sure you do have like a big list of things for facilities, but like how does that play?
Cycle in.
Yeah.
Because previous
Is that a
boards-
big question?
May I interject? How should I say this? I'd like to ask the board to stay on target with the issue. There's two other good issues. Field trips is a good issue. Where our priority list is a good issue. But we started this discussion around the issue of, does the district have administrative discretion to exceed the $15,000 on a project that will come to the board after the fact? That's really the issue at hand here on this particular discussion. The others are good discussions, I'm not dismissing them. My recommendation for what it would be worth is to at some point give your superintendent some discretion where the consequence of going over the $15,000 exceeds the typical procedure to bring that to the board before the action. And so that when it comes on an evening like this, and in your consent agenda, you have an item that's $16,000 instead of $14,999, and you need to look at your superintendent and say, did you feel like the consequences of going over that and bringing that to us after the fact exceeded the procedure that you should go to come in under 15? And the superintendent should be able to sit here and say, I needed to really do this. I called the president to let him know that I was going to do this, because if we didn't, we have all those consequences that Mr. Bernowski brought up. We had to do it then. I think the board would understand occasionally breaking the norm, because the consequences exceed the wrong of breaking the norm. I think that was the case here. In the future, I mean, I know John's saying you've given our council members that authority. You may want to keep it that way. You may want to say the council member may go to the superintendent and say, yes, so the superintendent sits here and says, yes, John and I decided that 16,000, we were going to know that we were going to have to come to you, but the consequences of not getting it done over the holidays exceeded asking you to approve something that was 1,000 and change over our limit.
So what you're saying is he did come to you and say, it's going to be $16,000, and you said, go.
I didn't say that.
Maybe I'm wrong.
I said that's what should happen.
Oh, okay. Well,
I think we do. I can't remember what I had for breakfast, so you'll have to, I don't.
Dr. Barton,
I'm not trying to throw
if
John
I
under
could
the
give a little
bus.
history here. So staff did bring before the previous board to a delegation of authority, which allowed the director of facilities to sign contracts. There was not a limit. There was not a dollar limit on the delegation of authority. And it was primarily due to what Mr. Bernowski said, the timing of the projects. So we had many projects, as you heard earlier, that we spent a lot of money within a short period of time. It was to keep us on track with those projects, so we would sign the contracts, bring them back to the board for ratification. That was a justification for the delegation of authority. So going back to this particular item, I was just following what had been approved by the previous board as an action, and I'm bringing it before you as I'm supposed to, for you to ratify that contract so we can pay the contractor for the work that was done.
Well, the proposal from the company is dated October 15th, 2018.
Yes,
October.
yes. And I had to look for a window of time when this room would be available for us to do the work. That's the proposal date.
I think in the future, really all, I don't want to speak for you, Jack.
Okay.
Essentially, we need to, I understand the point Rob made and you're making right now. In the future though, this was 16,000. What if it was 20? What if it was 25? We have oversight over these things. And if it's something like this, I don't see a real problem with that. I don't. And I understand how that works. But in the future, if you think things are going to go over, we would like to be informed.
It could be done on a Friday.
Yeah.
You know, when you give us our weekly.
Yeah.
Just say that we're gonna do a carpet project.
It was. I did report it on there. I'd give you the heads up.
Oh, if it was, I just say.
Probably to a previous board.
I think part of the problem is you have two boards here.
Yeah.
And this was done by the previous board, and we're just trying to get out, and we just want to establish the fact that, yes, in fact, it's not like we don't trust you, we would like a little notification if it's going to be over the 15,000.
Okay. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you want to change that to limit it to 15,000, because right now there's not a limit.
There's not a limit. Then why do we have the 15,000? What's the 15,000?
Okay, time out. First of all, we need to correct something. So this is not a new board. There wasn't an old board. This board is a perpetual body.
Right.
Members come and go, but the decisions that were made, in previous years still stand today, and a lot of the decisions are made for good reason. Some of those decisions have to change. But, 2 years ago, this board was approving every single contract, even if it was for $100 or $250. And, at the time I advocated I did not run for this position to review a stack of contracts every month when we hire professionals that have incredible credentials and history. And I thought, that's their job to review that. We have to approve certain things, policies and stuff like that. But I do know that the amount of work that these guys do, they can't be stalled over normal stuff. And even to report it, it's all, remember, it's all a trade-off, right? They can be focused on doing their jobs expertly, or they can be focused on being compliant with some, relatively small thing that we're going to sit here and debate. So I really would encourage you to step back, say, we're a $60 million organization. We have had board members consistently or whatever, and it's not that we shouldn't look at things on occasion, but let's stop the nitty gritty and focus on the big things. I mean, again, looking at the bond issuance, that's a big thing to this community because people see it on our property taxes. And I don't know if you guys caught all the nuances that our property taxes, if we delay it, would actually go down for a period, before they have to go back up. I personally would like that. But, the fact that this went $1,679 over, some limit.
Well, then should we do away with the limit?
No.
Why'd you come up with 15,000? Where'd that come
So we were looking at the number of contracts, like the very volume of the contracts that was taking time. And I have to tell you, we were finding a lot of issues with contracts, but by some diligence, we got an improvement, in those, and we decided to trust the administration above a certain, limit. If we were to go to, become larger, maybe we want to make the limit 25,000. But if we don't trust our administrators, especially at this level.
I understand. It's not that I'm not trusting anybody.
Let me try.
This has nothing to do with trust. If you have a $15,000, then do you need to move it up? I don't know. But part of our job is to have oversight. $15,000 is a lot of money. And if we want to raise it to 20, fine. But I do think we need to have something when you spend even that kind of money. Obviously, $100, $200 level warrants that we have here, no big deal. But when you start getting up to $15,000, $20,000, to me, it is a big deal.
My my take on it, listening to each of you board members, is that, and this is a question about trusting your administration. I understand the policy, but it's also about discretion. I would expect that this board would indicate to its administration that it does trust it, that it does understand the credentials it has, and does understand that they're going to be making decisions every day. When time permits and when it's possible, anything that goes over 15,000 should be brought to this board. When there's good reason, discretion at professionals like John and others, that something has to happen and it will be brought to you retroactively, I would hope that you would understand that. And where you would draw the line, in my opinion, would be when you feel that privilege is being abused. When you see items coming to you every meeting, 50 or 20, 25, 30,000, well, you know, we got behind, we needed to do this. Then the trust breaks down, the policy begins to become ineffective, and it does, the whole idea about bringing contracts says we don't really approve contracts except retroactively, we put it all in the hands of administration. There are circumstances, John deals with hundreds of thousands of dollars every week in all kinds of things, and there are times when he just has to schedule and coordinate those. I would hope that you would put the trust in not only him, but all of administration in our lives, that if there is good reason to go forward on something and then bring it to you retroactively, that you will understand it. And only when you feel like that rule is being abused, because we do have a standard of 15,000, when one or more of us is abusing that, then you begin to draw a line and say,
okay,
unfortunately.
That's reasonable. I get you. That's reasonable.
And I mean, we create a budget, and I think that's what's important as a board to have oversight on. So if there's a budget for deferred maintenance or for whatever type of maintenance, and we've got a running tally, okay, we've used up, 50% of that, or we should be at least tracking that, just like we do with any program. At 50% of the year, you should have 50% of your of that down, so, but I think the optics, like Jan was alluding to, is that if we have certain set conditions for criteria for replacing carpets at the sites, for teachers in the classroom, what is that related to when it comes to the DO? Because the optics is also important, that we're not just overlooking our sites to focus in on certain projects at the DO. Granted, still needed, a roof and different things that we've neglected at the DO for many, many years finally had an opportunity to get done. But I think that's what's important, as in seeing what are the needs, what are we gonna be focusing on? So if we know, like Rob was saying, I need to, in my department, we need to focus on these projects. I need this allocation to ensure that our roofs are not leaking, we've got gutters, we've got whatever I feel needs to get covered in that year is there, so that we know, okay, John is gonna make sure we got this.
So when do you set these priorities, like in July or for the year, or how?
Well, you're setting the budget, we're gonna be working on setting the budget for next year. And what does that look like? What does that look like? That's why it's important, I think, to really know what the needs are in the coming year for facilities. What is cycling in, like we said, for paint, for whatever it is, because John has to make sure that he's got to coordinate all of that, and in what timeframes, what pockets of time. I mean, it's all, a little finessing dance, and with the crew that he has as well. What can his crew do, and what needs to be contracted out? So it's all looking at that area of need, but also I think for everyone's ability to be transparent is laying it out that way, because then it helps us to know where we are and what we can gauge as far as costs.
Yeah, we had, at some point last year, the year before, we had a facilities plan that included the district office and all of I believe the priorities were. We approved that, so.
One of the things that has got me is the dip out here in the asphalt and lack of lighting out here.
So,
Well, this is what I just let me finish, please.
Well, the problem is it's not on the agenda.
What I'm about to say is gonna be on the agenda, okay?
Okay.
What I'm trying to say is that priorities where people can get hurt versus replacing a carpet, those are things that I think that should warrant, we need to look at when we do this new facility thing that we're
Facility
doing.
plan and the budget for the next coming year.
Will be part of it in the future.
Okay. I appreciate your conversation, and I hope that you will know that the district, as far as my recommendations will be concerned, is that we follow policies when we can, that occasionally discretion will have to be exercised by administration, and not until you, as a board, feel like we are abusing our discretion, will you call us on it. And we will understand, we back up, but I think this is well within the discretion. It was well within the discretion of the need to do it, exceeded the right to bring this forward before the amount.
And for myself, I just want to say that I'm not going to ask a lot of questions because I'm brand new to, all of this. And so I hope everyone understands that it's for understanding, clarification, and then be able to make decisions for the future. So thank you.
So Jan, do you want to make a motion to approve that one item?
I was about to.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to approve 9G, ratification of the agreement between HSD and JP Jordan and Associates.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
10.
We're at 10, right?
Yeah, 10A.
10A. 2014 General Obligation Bond Consent Item. Approval Resolution number 1118-19, Establishment of the Hollister School District Bond Citizens Oversight Committee. Annual meeting dates. It is recommended that the board approve a resolution 1118-19, Establishment of the Hollister School District Bond Citizens Oversight Committee. Annual meeting dates.
So moved. No discussion. As a consent.
Second.
So I'll make a motion. She seconded.
She second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Going to the next one. 11B. Do we get to see these colors? Approval of interior exterior colors for new school.
Excuse me, Mr.
Aren't we on 11A?
Item 11A.
Oh, I thought,
Yes,
oh, okay, I'm sorry.
it was, we're just gonna do discussion.
Oh, just for discussion.
Just for
All right.
discussion.
No.
I thought-
Yes.
Oh, right.
I wrote it
Yeah.
down.
Me too.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, no, I support.
So,
So the discussion item is, I'm hearing a lot of blowback on the fence, and then the wording in our presentation sort of worried me where I thought I saw somewhere where it was like at the desire of the Hollister School Board, that we look into this. As I recall, and this is why I wanted to discuss it, it came up because a board member had said, was it you? I thought it was, okay, had said, hey, I'm worried that a car could go off-road and, onto the school grounds and harm children. And the reason I wanted to discuss it is because, from what I'm understanding, a huge amount of the community out there at Santana Ranch, they're unhappy with it for aesthetic reasons and other things. And I wanted to discuss or hear from John and you or whatever is the landscaping, especially in its final form, does it lend itself to a car going off-road and being able to get to our school? And I do have, just for context,
Still gonna have a fence there anyway.
I had that happen where somebody drove through my property and onto a school ground where children were playing. It came across, it was a drunk driver. But our property lent itself to that happening just naturally. So does that property lend itself to it?
Well, again, going back to the crystal ball, anything is possible. I will tell you though that the design team did not recommend a certain barrier or vehicle deterrent wall when they were designing the site. they felt that there was adequate space from the public right-of-way, which would be the back of the sidewalk on Fairview, back through the storm basin, and then the 8-foot chain link fence, especially since the higher speed of travel on Fairview would be parallel to the storm basin versus coming directly towards it. I will tell you that the plans are being reviewed by the DSA as well as the CDE. And if they were to come back with that type of recommendation, then we would come back to the board definitely and say that this is a requirement from the state, either agency, stating that they feel that we need to have some other type of deterrent or barrier here besides the chain link fence. So that was the logic behind the design plan for just the 8-foot chain link fence. I will tell you as well that our landscaping plan also includes additional trees to be planted along that fence line to help for a couple things, to be a barrier and to help block maybe balls and that type of things from going over into the storm drain, as well as it will eventually cut down on some of the wind that will blow through there as well because it faces directly east. So we do have some natural barriers. We'll have the storm basin as well.
How deep is that storm basin?
You know, I don't recall off the top of my head the exact, but I can get that number for you. I will tell you that we have been working with the county on the road that's directly in front of the school, Santana Ranch Drive, to work with them on the proper signage for schools. They're incorporating a pedestrian crosswalk mid-block, so between the school and the park, again, to help if people park on the east side of Santana Ranch Drive, they have a safe path to travel to cross the street versus just crossing wherever they may choose to. And we'll work with the county and in regards to the possibility of advocating for school zone signs on Fairview as you get closer to that intersection at Sunny Slope, because we foresee students having to cross at that major intersection.
Yeah.
And so we will be working with them to advocate to reduce speeds during school hour times to help to create a safer environment for our students as they come to school.
So, but again, Jim, my whole point is, again, blowback from, I'm getting.
I've read the blowback and it's not that many.
So, well, I'm hearing a lot. So, but the other thing is you have to take a look at, in general, walls attract graffiti and walls also attract signage, please. And more importantly, from a school system point of view, they provide a place for people to hide. And that's what, what I don't like about, from what I was reading and all of these things. I'm saying, so you have all those negative things and weighing against the possibility of a car jumping, going across Fairview or whatever, making it all the way that distance, going through the storm basin. And then I'm looking at elevations on there going, the likelihood of a car transversing all of that just, it does not outweigh all of those other negatives. I just think we need to think about it before, we spend a lot of time on it.
I think the community needs to understand there is going to be a fence there. To think that there's not going to be fencing along that line, there is going to be a fence there. Because we have to fence in.
All of our schools.
Yeah, all of our schools are fenced.
Well, close to the school is one thing.
No,
solid
but
wall.
there is going to be a fence.
But it shouldn't be.
We don't have to do the wall. That was just a suggestion. We don't have to.
Barrier.
Yeah, it was called a barrier, but there's still going to be a fence. All of our schools are fenced.
John, when are those reports due? From this, you said they were going to look at this, the safety factor. When are they going to do them and when will we be able to read them?
Well, the plans have been submitted now, so again, we're just waiting on them.
Waiting for the reports, you have no idea.
I have no idea at this point.
But the plans were on the original plan of just the chain link fence.
That's correct. It's an 8-foot chain link fence that runs the perimeter of that, yes. And it's black vinyl, so it's not a galvanized fence, so similar to all the, what we've been adding at the school sites with our
Right,
modernization projects, it kind of disappears as you look at it.
That's good.
You ready for public comment?
Yeah, they just.
Brenda? Three minutes.
Thank you. My name is Brenda Majora, and I live on the Santana Ranch. I want to thank John because he answered my phone call today when I had additional questions about this. We know there's going to be a fence up there or something. We know that. I mean, it's a school in today's society. There is a need for something. We know that. But when it comes out in the paper saying there's going to be a 4-foot wall plus a chain link fence on top of it, and the aesthetics of that, the kind way to put it from the people up in Santana Ranch, if I may speak for them, is that it's not consistent with the aesthetics of the area. We paid a lot of money for our houses. You know, and on per the square footage of my house, I paid additional amount. We don't want to see our property values drop. We don't want to see what, if I may quote you, Mr. Bernowski, we don't want to see our flagship school look like a prison. We don't want to see that. So in the interest of creating a beautiful flagship school that we all want to go to, plus a safe one, the aesthetics need to be considered. What we paid needs to be considered. I actually do have photos of that area on my phone that I took this afternoon. It's not likely that a car is going to jump the trench out there. How many people here, if I may ask of the board, how many people have been out to the site? That is good to hear. But it's not likely that a car is going to jump that. If there's another reason that a wall is wanted, or whatever security reasons, or so there's not an open view into the school, that's one thing, but a car's not going to jump that trench. It's not. Yeah. The other thing is that if, in the event that it could happen, has anyone reached out to the local sheriff's department and see what accidents have happened in the past? You know, let's get everybody together. I've heard here tonight some really good things as far as let's reach out to the county, let's reach out and get together. Well, let's get them in, let's invite them to the party too. You know, let's find out what historically is there, and is there a need for a wall? Or just your standard fence around the school?
What are some of the solutions?
Thank you.
No other public comment?
Okay.
This is just discussion tonight, it's not
just discussion.
for approval. If you will, but up the points.
And I just want to, for discussion, what are the processes of looking at, or who do we talk to about, you know, some areas where there's schools, they put those little white
Lights.
bumps or
Even the
or
lights.
even the lights, like something like that, so that drivers, you know, become
slow down that
aware.
there are students that want to cross and are actually wanting, because I know the one that they put right here by Rancho to cross over on Nash, huge improvement. I mean, I think the city working with you, John, and providing any areas with more safety and measures that we could ensure that they're just visible, day or night. I mean, the high school's gone to great measures to work, but I mean, for that purpose, but I mean, in these areas, as we get more impacted by more and more buildings and more people driving their kids to school, we need to make sure and work with them to build in these types of safeguards.
I understand, and we will continue working with the county and the city to improve this for safety of our students.
Discussion.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
We'll be bringing back at the next meeting, the list of items as Dr. Barr mentioned earlier this evening, for your review and.
and I'll talk to you about this outside of here, but I would think that we just might want to get just a little bit more information from some professionals like law enforcement or whatever in terms of how they judge the safety of that intersection, the danger. You know, is the berm, I mean, is the culvert unlikely to be jumped? Is a fence, a regular kind of a fence, effective enough? I always weigh in on the side of safety. I just want to be assured, you know, the board, I know Mr. Cho will agree with me that the board's first concern is going to be safety. And yes, they want to be concerned about aesthetics and the value of the properties. That good neighbors are important. We really didn't want to be on that intersection. You know that. You fought very hard to be in the middle of that development instead of the corner. But because we were relegated to that place, we have an obligation to make sure the students are going to be safe. And in the meantime, we need to work with the residents. We need to work with law enforcement, whoever it takes to say, yes, I think this is what it will take. If it doesn't need a wall, it doesn't need a wall.
Yeah, those reports I think are important. I'd like to read them.
Come back with some evidence that says this, you know, a chain link fence plus the culvert would be sufficient.
It's a pretty deep culvert.
We do have an obligation to make it look as beautiful as possible while achieving safety. That would be my goal.
And like you said, the trees, I know there's a road of trees planted already.
That's correct.
So is the chain link fence on which side of those trees?
On the back side of the trees, and then we're adding additional trees on our side.
Okay.
I like the idea of trees stuff.
I do too. When they get bigger,
they look better.
Not too safe in the beginning, but when they get bigger.
Maybe you can do some investigating there.
Well, and I think that when a board member just asks to find out the cost of something, it doesn't mean it's gonna happen. But we need to always go with what is the best for the safety of our children. That's where that came from. Not that to make it look like a prison or to be a bad neighbor. But our job here is to make sure the children are as safe as they can be. And when you look at the cost, you think, oh my gosh, for $172,000, you know, is that the price to pay for one child? It's cheap. That's all that this was all about, is how do we protect the children on this highway speed? And I don't know about lowering traffic, and I've driven Fairview now for too many years because I used to live in Ridgemar, and so I've driven that thing every day. And yeah, it's a high-speed freeway, especially if it's a green light. And that's why it was put on the board. So it wasn't to get everybody upset, it was to find out about how we can protect children. And that's what it was about, nothing else.
All right.
Moving on?
Yes, and
Nothing B.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're okay, if the principal's okay, if it's getting the late hour. I just want to make sure that they have the discretion of this board, that if they
Absolutely.
believe they
So
may.
be it.
All right.
All right, let's get to the next item, 11B, approval of interior, exterior colors for new school at Satana Ranch. Do we get to see, oh, here we go. That's what I was wanting.
Show it out. I know, no.
Teal's a light blue.
So at the October meeting, staff and the design team suggested the color scheme for the exterior of the building. And what we have here is, we have an example of the district's color palette for similar style architecture within the district. So the mission style, Spanish roof, that type of thing. These are the colors that we typically have. The architect is looking at something in this color scheme here. And this would be with the roof color, which I actually brought a sample of the roof, just so you could kind of tell.
What's that made out of?
This is made out of metal. This is a metal panel.
Okay.
That gives the appearance of a.
It looks like the old corkboard.
Was that 50 years, 70 years?
It is, and
50 years?
it's more durable than your standard clay tile. And the way the school is designed, we won't be walking on this. This is going to be more or less the overhangs or the mansard of the buildings. So this will last pretty much forever. But tonight, we're asking you to consider approving the color palette so we can move forward with the color schemes. And then the interior, they recommended that we go with more of a neutral color. And they'll fall off there, but I did that on purpose, so in case you wanted to touch any of the materials or that type of thing. But at this point, we have not decided on a name for the school, a mascot for the school color. So it was recommended that we go with more of a neutral color, so that one of a primary color, if it's chosen in the future, would be able to work with this type of scheme. At the next board meeting, I plan to bring a proposal for a procedure for a public name campaign for the school, and then that may play into some of this as well. But this is for your consideration. We do have some schools that already have this similar color scheme. This is all of our standard materials that we've been using throughout all of our projects for our bond projects. And again, going with our standard interior color, long-term maintenance, it definitely helps our staff to maintain, and we don't have to keep as many different colors of paint and so forth.
So are, like the carpet samples I'm looking at there, are we picking left one versus the right?
No, so this would be your walk-off carpet, and this is similar to what we have here around the perimeter. This isn't replacing the, like a floor mat as you would come into a room.
So is this like indoor, outdoor?
Yes, it's got it's more coarse, and it catches most of the dirt before you actually get into the rest of the room. This is the color scheme and the design. Again, same materials that we've used at all the other sites. Recommended for the office, the administration office, the library, as well as in the lounges.
So this is like, oh, I see, this is different.
And that's very similar to this. It's the same carpet, it's just a different color scheme.
Is there anything special like stain resistant, or what are we talking about here?
Yeah, so.
That's the death knell sometimes of carpets in a classroom.
Is this what's in here?
It is. It is not tiles, they're 6-foot wide rolls.
Oh, okay.
Yes. But this is, you'll see it's a rubber backing, so water does not penetrate through the carpet. If it is damaged, it can be easily cut out and blends very nicely, as you can see with the installation here.
Well, you just said something that caught my attention. So isn't normal industrial type stuff, you do the carpet squares so that if you end up with a stain somewhere, you can easily just pick up that 1, 2, or 3 and go?
Yeah, there's pros and cons to that. So it is beneficial and quicker if there is a section that's damaged. But I will tell you, if it's not maintained properly, over a period of time, you will see the outline of each one of those carpet squares.
Sorry.
That would be your classroom
Oh,
standard
okay.
carpet.
Okay.
So, John, just as a question, because I know we have our representative from the housing community there, but in looking, kind of walking, because I know that certain developments have certain color palettes that they start doing that just, it just looks, it all fits, and they have certain codes, that you can't get on this bright pink or turquoise going on, or, sort of thing. So, to keep in good relationships with our community next door and looking at what their color palettes look like, I don't want to say bothered, sorry, sorry.
We invest.
Have we looked
Inquired.
into or inquired to go by and see what those color palettes look like to incorporate that into our building so that it blends, it accentuates, it's part of, it was almost thought of as, it was built as an extension of that community as a school. And as she stated, you want it to be aesthetically beautiful but complementary to one another. I don't know if we've done that.
That's why we asked the architect to come up with a suggested colors scheme for the school. They did that. They've been to Santana Ranch several times. They've looked at the architecture of the homes, construction up there, and felt that this was a color scheme that would fit in nicely with that community.
On which one, restroom?
What does that say on the red?
District standard
Well, here-
color palette.
Yeah, so this is your more traditional tile roof, clay tile roof that we
Oh, I see.
have at Gatlin Hills, Calaveras, Mays, that type of thing.
Oh, okay, that's a different roofing.
It is a different roof.
So are
Because can that roofing be on Blacksmith goes more with Santana Ranch though, that style?
This is actually a lot less expensive
Oh,
than,
yeah.
than the clay tile.
Sure it is.
Is there, I know, because for a lot of firms, they have the 3D look as what the application of the colors would look like on the building, to have a better idea, to say, this is, you know, our color selection, this is what it would look like. I think that's important because I don't want to decide, yeah, you know, based on 3 colors, but what would other 3 colors look like, you know? I mean, we've never done a brand new school in this, you know, in a very long time. You know,
We were
Mays
involved with Mays
and Mays,
and,
Gatlin Hills, Ladley,
well,
those were
how it
last.
came about with Mays is that first, we picked the colors and then we picked the mascot. So it was first the colors, then the mascot, similar what the approach that you are suggesting. And somehow or another, we came up with the blue, you know, so we were to be blue. For the cupboards, you know, the cupboards were, and the carpets were blue and the chairs and the, you know, were to be blue, that kind of stuff. So, yeah, so this is exactly how we did Mays.
How soon do we have to decide on this, John?
We would like you to decide this evening.
So what color would be the cupboards? What?
Oh, so for the classrooms, we're looking at the khaki brown would be the face of the cupboard.
Uh-huh.
And then we're looking at what they're called a coffee bean, which is more of the dark
For the
brown
counter?
for the countertop. Mhm. And then for your office, library, and so forth, we're looking at the harvest maple, which would be the face with this countertop, the khaki brown here. Classrooms will have tackable wall boards on 3 walls, so we're looking at a taupe color. The restrooms, we're looking at.
Is that where it fills in? If there's a pin, it fills it back in like it Mays?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, that's
So
just
three
like Mays.
of the 4 classroom walls will have
Yeah,
tackable.
that's just like Mays.
And the other will be a full.
The 4th wall is the window wall, and so it's majority windows, and it'd be just the standard paint color.
Yeah.
So I know for the high school, they would do like a bright wall. I mean, where the teacher could just use the walls to do instruction right out on there, and just so that they weren't just stuck to one area for lessons, or, you know, as kids are doing different ideas, you know, they could actually write out the ideas. But I don't know if we were incorporating anything like that into these classrooms.
In the cupboards, I know that the counter is 24 inches, right? Do you remember how tall the cupboards were?
I want to say they're 34 inches. I believe that's it.
Yeah.
But the standard for the classroom is really what we've been putting in all the other modernizations. So we have a learning lab,
Yeah.
which is, we consider the front of the classroom, which would include the 70-inch flat screen TV. And on each side of the flat screen TV would be a 4x8 magnetic whiteboard. So you have two of those. And then the bell clock speaker would be located there as well. That's generally the front of the classroom. The rest of the walls would be the tack board. And then with this situation, the window wall would be more or less open. And this would be the, more or less the window covering that we're looking at.
Get some light.
It's a 5% visibility.
So it still protects for when we do lockdowns that we have to bring the window coverings down.
That's correct, and that's what we've been installing. Just a different color at the other sites.
You don't have the height. It says 25 feet wide and 2 feet deep.
I can double check.
Okay, yeah, just curious, because they are, because it is, if we do decide to make it a K through 8, it's gonna have to, you got kids of different sizes.
Right, yeah, so the cabinets obviously in the kinder would probably be around 30 inches.
Yeah.
And then for the science labs and their workstations, they'd be probably a little bit higher because they have stools. So yes, it will vary, but that would be the color scheme throughout the school.
I think it's a good discussion. I again, trying to balance the authority of the board with the production. I think that what I would hope the board would do here is agree that the colors and the textures that we're seeing are within the range of what you would think would look nice. I did appreciate the comments that Jan said that we hope that the colors and schemes and trends that we use would be complementary of the development that we are going to be serving. But we don't want to go too far. I mean, we've got 5 opinions here. Right. We could be here till I'm good to go. We could be here till morning. But I would say I'm hoping that these colors are satisfactory in terms of the level of colors you want to see. There may be slight variations, but we're giving permission to the architect and the design people to come up with something that is pleasing to the eye and complementary to the residents of the neighborhood.
I want to make one of those motions.
I'm gonna ask a question real quick.
Sure.
And just because sitting
Why
out
don't
here.
you come on up and we'll
Sorry.
follow
The easiest
We'll
dispense with the card.
It's just, I hear, sitting out there, I hear 2 different topics. I hear a color of that color scheme, that design, and then I've heard Jen and a couple other people mention a couple times the cupboards and the cabinetry. And it was my understanding that the cabinetry was back with 11A.
Yes.
And that was not going to be, it was gonna be discussed but not voted on.
Right.
But what I'm hearing is that we'd really like to have a vote just on those colors.
Right.
But the cabinetries, which involves more money, is not gonna come until later as far as a vote.
Right.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
He has the colors
Yes.
of the
You understand
cabinetry. That's why we were talking about it.
Okay, but from sitting out there, it looked like the 2 were starting
Who
to
has the
get
colors
melded.
then?
No, there are some
Cabinets
built-in.
and-
There's already some built-in cabinetry in some of the classrooms, such as the science lab and the arts classroom and so forth. So we'll carry that theme. So if the board does approve additional storage, then we'll go with the same color scheme.
Okay, I was confused sitting out here.
No, I think she stated it awfully well. The difference to me is that the choosing of colors, there is no increase to the scope of the project, the scope and cost of the project. cabinets, the wall, the science protections, the toxicity commission is asking about are all additions to the scope, which is an increase to the dollars. That's why we're bringing that back. Colors are not going to increase the scope of the dollars.
Steve,
I think, listening to what Board Member Martinez said, I think this is an opportunity to just celebrate the good things that are happening with this new school.
Mhm.
And sometimes when you can have something on video, something, sort of that a person can pull up on the district website that shows, this is what it's gonna look like. And, I kind of heard that from what you were talking about, Liz. And, obviously, if you have an eye for interior design, like some of us do, you really care about the way certain colors look. You don't want to walk in and see colors that don't look good. But I think what John is presenting to us, certainly looks unified in terms of, how those colors balance off of one another. But I think each step of the way with Santana Ranch is a chance for the board and for the school district to celebrate the good that is happening with this new school.
Absolutely. So my only recommendation on this is, please don't laugh at me, is if we're going to approve this tonight, that we require John to save these, because you never know what's going to happen. And we might walk into a situation where, wait a minute, this is not, and we will not have this, because this can't be in the minutes.
Right.
Is that reasonable? Yes.
These are samples,
Yeah.
I mean,
It's on that, right?
Yes.
This is a good idea.
Yeah, these are our samples. We can definitely keep those.
It's a big school and somebody's painting something and you approved it and you didn't think about it, and now we have a pink, interior. So
That's very reasonable.
Yeah, and throw out the stuff that we don't want. So like, the red there, we're not gonna take that red top, yeah.
We're not taking this.
Yeah, so, right.
Yes.
And then the stuff that we are gonna take and then, glue that on or whatever. And so if we have parents that come see it or whatever, they have something to look at.
Paste them on a board.
We can do exactly that. We can have it here in the board
Yeah.
room on display. And we can also, the renderings that you saw for the 100% drawing had this color scheme.
Right.
So if you approve the color scheme tonight, we already have those that can be uploaded onto the district website.
Right.
So that everybody sees them. It does
Yeah.
give you that physical look of the buildings and stuff.
Yeah,
So
just get the stuff that we're not gonna get and I think that'd be wonderful. These are good colors.
So could we have a motion?
Yes.
Thank
Go,
you.
Garth, go. I think that's my first one.
And you need to name all those colors. Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, I did. I make a motion to approve the colors
As presented.
as presented by Director John Thenia.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Thank you,
Moving
John.
on.
thank you very much.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Okay, 12A, approval of agreement between Hollister School District and Central Coast Refrigeration LLC. It is recommended the board approve the agreement with Central Coast Refrigeration LLC. Discussion.
Well, you want to tell us about it?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I've been working with the student nutrition department in regards to this project. This project is a desperate need on their behalf due to the type of meal programs that we offer throughout our schools. As you know, we offer free breakfast and lunch to all of our students at all of our school sites, and therefore the need for additional space at the district office here to support those meal programs is definitely needed. So the student nutrition department approached me about the need for an additional freezer. We have some very old refrigeration equipment here at the district office. It's been moved several times. as the district offices have been moved and relocated. The purpose of the new freezer, it would be a 35-foot by 50-foot by 11-foot high walk-in freezer. It would strictly just be used as a freezer. We would repurpose our existing freezer, which is much smaller, and make that a refrigeration unit. And then the oldest existing freezers that we have now, we would convert those and use those for dry storage. So this would give us a new reliable freezer to store goods, and we would repurpose more or less our existing equipment out here in the warehouse. So we did put this out to bid. We only received one bid. This is what you would call a building within a building. So we would be building this walk-in freezer box. It's like a puzzle. It just locks together inside the existing warehouse here that we have at the district office.
Which warehouse, John?
I'm sorry?
Which warehouse?
Oh, the very end, where it used to be for storage of supplies and so forth.
So, John, the one thing that caught my attention on this is we are here in the Salinas Valley. Refrigeration is huge. Wineries, the ag stuff, we certainly have enough restaurants and other, institutions. I don't understand how we can put this out and we only get one bid back. That defies logic to me.
Mr. Banowski, believe it or not, sometimes we get no responses when we put things out to bid. It's the environment that we're in today in regards to there's plenty of work out there. Sometimes we'll get bids, as we've seen in the past too, for roofing projects that it's just astronomical because people are just throwing numbers out there. We have a system in place that we have pre-qualified vendors that meet our qualifications. And we did advertise directly to them. I want to say there was close to 13 to 15 of them that we sent the RFP to. Again, they have an interest in doing business with the district. They are on our pre-qualified list, so we send it to them directly, and we only received one.
Okay, now it's coming back to me from the oversight committee. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So just so we're clear, this is Ann Pennington's pocket of money, correct?
That's correct.
So it's
what?
she, just like migrant, gets spent to pay its things, people, projects, inventory, whatever it is that they need. It's a categorical.
Okay.
Yeah, just so if I may, so we have our district general fund, Fund 01, and then child nutrition comes out of Fund 13, and it is very restricted. And all those revenues come from a couple of sources: state, food service, USDA, and some paid lunch. We had paid lunch. So it's all that money could only be spent on the child nutrition program, could not be spent on anything else. In fact, the fund balance in that fund has been so large that the state's actually coming to us saying,
You need to
spend it or we will take it.
Yes.
So, we're looking at our needs and we're using that to upgrade some equipment.
I had one question. You talked about adapting the current freezer that we have to make it into like a refrigeration. That's not included in this. It's going to be something else, another bid on that, or, okay. Do you know when that's going to happen, or?
Not at the moment, no.
I'll make a motion that we approve the contract with Central Coast Refrigeration for $169,423.86.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? You have your refrigerator? Thank you, John. Freezer.
And that's her new
This next item is going to be a verbal summary of the compensation package offered to the superintendent, which I will read right now. AB 1437 became effective January 2017, requiring executive compensation to be orally summarized in open session before it is approved by the board. The superintendent's total compensation will be $209,000 per school year, February 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2022. Superintendent shall be employed for the final 5 months of 2018-19 school year. Total salary for the 2018-19 year shall be $90,229.07. The superintendent shall be entitled to receive the same health and welfare benefits package that is provided to other full-time district certificated administrative employees. The superintendent shall be entitled to vacation equal to that of senior management of the district. Vacation shall be accrued and accumulated in the same manner as for senior management of the district. Dues to 2 professional education organizations will be provided. Also, other annual membership dues and other professional and community service organizations may be approved by the board not to exceed $1,000. It is recommended that the board approve the amended contract with Diego Ochoa as superintendent of the Hollister School District.
Let me, to avoid any confusion, I know you're all saying, didn't we go through this the last month? We did. And yet, and Gabe will explain the different amount here than what was done at the last board meeting was that amount of money that was calculated for the remainder of the 2018-19 school year was based on an academic year instead of the administrative year. So there's a difference in that amount. But we felt in the spirit of full disclosure, full transparency, we had to bring the whole thing back and rediscuss it again. Gabe, you want to validate that my statement here is correct? And that's what we're doing here tonight. It's not any kind of, different contracts, the same identical contract. It's simply the amount that was calculated for the remainder of the 18-19 school year was done off of a different calendar than it should have been. And so we had to recalculate it on an administrative year, not the academic year. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes, that's correct. The initial was actually calculated doing entire annual salary divided by 12 multiplied by 5. So as giving it an amount per month. To make it more precise, it was done per day. When you took the prior amount per day, that ended up being 87 days. And if you took a look at the remainder of the administrative year, it was 98 days, not 87. So then that multiplied by the daily rate, which was the contract amount divided by contract days, that came to the $90,229.07.
It's basically just adjusting the amount that you approved last time, but we have to go through it, stating it. Now, this portion of the agenda is the full disclosure of stating what it is. That has the new law that was passed in 17 says you have to disclose that in full in a regularly scheduled meeting in open session. So hopefully that is clear. And if there are any questions, Mr. Chairman, we would be happy to answer them during this discussion. This is only a discussion agenda item because it's in 2 parts. Right. It'll come back as the action item next. So right now, if there's any questions the board members have or anybody from the audience, we're prepared to ask them. Otherwise, you can go ahead.
I fully understand.
Everybody?
I trust you.
Okay. Then
I'll make a motion that we
It
accept.
doesn't need a motion.
Oh,
It's just a present, it's just a
Okay.
disclosure.
Just discussion.
Just full disclosure.
Yeah.
Okay, going to 12C.
Yes.
Yes.
Discussion and possible approval of amended employment agreement with superintendent. It is recommended that board approve the amended contract with Diego Ochoa as the superintendent of the Hollister School District.
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Well, actually,
We have
I
discussion.
want to discuss it because I'm on the fence on this now because that period after the end of his name is still in the first paragraph. That's all I asked for is that.
Be moved.
Yeah.
Yikes.
So, I don't know, I'd like to
I'll
discuss
light it up for
it. Yeah.
I don't know.
That's my only discussion.
Okay.
So
I made that adjustment.
I think so moved. We do need a second though.
I did.
All
I
in
made the
favor?
motion.
Now,
Okay.
is there any other discussion?
Yeah.
Is there any other? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. I'm not saying no. There are no. The motion passes 5-0.
5-0.
All right.
Okay, board member report. Anybody have anything to report?
Well, yeah, I met with, we were at, Mr. Ochoa's, meet and greet on Tuesday.
It was not a Thursday, it was fast.
No, that was a Thursday, but I did some Tuesday too, I can't remember now.
We went to the maze.
Oh, that's right. Oh, that was awesome. Went to the maze, bullying, anti-bullying, drug, done by the SRO, and he did a very good job. We had lots of Spanish-speaking parents. It was well attended. Erica Sanchez was there, and she answered several questions that parents had. So was Rob. I met with HESTA president, Carla and I did on Monday for about an hour just to go over things and see how we'd like to meet with the HESTA president, different board members once a month, and just to make sure things are going okay that way. And that's about it for me.
I last week was invited to go to the Chamber of Commerce, Hollister Chamber of Commerce luncheon, where business people spoke about the future of Hollister and all the people that are coming to our city. I did get a chance to speak, so I did. Made sure that they were aware that if you're approving all of these houses, that they bring children with them, and to understand that we are going to need some help from them. They're part of this issue, and I was well received, so I was very happy. I was glad to have a chance to speak and got some really nice feedback. Some supervisors were there. Got a lot done, I think.
You were there Thursday too.
Yeah. That's it for me.
Any other board reports? Okay.
Okay, moving on. Future agenda items.
Well, I do want to say that on the December 18th, I had asked for that the Ed department work on some kind of a writing rubric that has equity between our Spanish speakers, our EL students, and our English only. So maybe that, I don't know if that's coming, but to work on that. And then how we're evaluating the coaches and their effectiveness in regards to achievement at the school site. So, and then on the 8th, I did ask that Junior provide for us the cost of printers for all of our teachers in the classrooms. I had a great discussion with someone who I have great respect for, and we talked about the need of why it's so important that teachers can be able to print in their classroom. One thing teachers do not have is time. And let's say they want a new lesson for science. And, you know, they have like 20 minutes and they find this lesson, they want to print it. And if it's going to a central place to print and the kids are coming back, you don't even know sometimes when you go there if it's going to be there when you come back. Especially if a parent wants a report card grade. You know, my parent wants my grade. Or if I'm a special ed teacher. And I think that the tech department really needs to understand the needs of these teachers in their rooms. And with printers being so cheap, we need to really think about this because our teachers need it.
Dan, the only thing that I would ask in your future report would be that, that you, if you're asking the staff to come back with a cost for printers, you ask them to come back with a cost for printer and ink.
Okay.
Because ink typically is 4 to 6 times the cost.
Right, yeah, for sure.
It far exceeds, you can buy a $100 printer, it'll cost you $700 a year for ink.
Right, yeah.
So, and the cost has got to include both.
Right,
So,
yeah, okay.
That's the only thing, and you're coming into budget season, you know, a report, you know, and I think JR is the right person to ask, along with Gabe, about the cost of those things. Then the decision would have to be made between the board and educational services and so forth as to whether if that's something that you want to prioritize.
Well, I just don't, we should not make it so hard to be a teacher.
No, it's not, we won't be discussing it. I'm just simply saying that if you're asking the board the staff to bring back the cost, it would be with the printer and the ink, and then it would get into the cost versus the offset. I perfectly understand the rationale why you're asking.
Right.
Anybody else with the future?
Yeah, I want to ask, how do we follow up on the workshop that we had asked for? We had asked for 2, is that workshop for special ed and then the traffic?
Yes, Mr. Cho and I have discussed the list of items that you have asked for in reports. We feel it's very important to have your new superintendent in place to begin those discussions. He's also asked me about some possible workshops in the areas of sportsmanship and governance and so forth, as well as those other areas of school district operation. So he will be bringing those back to you. It's important that he be part of those discussions.
I think it's important, what caught me off guard at today's meeting is we didn't have closed session. And given the email traffic that we're getting on special ed, you know, I would like at least the superintendent and or whoever, you know, Jeff or whatever, even if it's just for 15 minutes to have a closed session, just to go over. Here's why you're getting this traffic, here's what's going on, because we need to send, we need to spend some time on this, even if, just to know what's going on this week or this 2 weeks.
I agree.
I agree with that.
Under the banner that it is future litigation, the potential litigation.
Well, closed session, yeah,
Closed
that's
session.
why,
Yeah, we can't just discuss special ed, but we can discuss the cases that we have that are litigious, potentially litigious.
Anybody? Announcements, reminders.
I'll remind you that it's almost 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Well, we have the Brown Act and the Brown workshop, and then we also have the governor's, is that next Thursday?
It's this Thursday.
This coming Thursday? And when is the traffic? Is that? We're not gonna be able to do all these things. We were supposed to do the traffic this Thursday too.
No, the meeting's all scheduled. The principals are gonna be there.
What traffic?
A subcommittee that you asked for between Mr. Kane and Mr. Chris to meet, to discuss the traffic issues, and we're setting the meeting up with principals to help them look at the options that we could do to mitigate the traffic problems. And
How long is the meeting in Monterey?
It's usually about 2.5 hours roughly, 2 to 2.5 hours.
so Gabe and Jesus, would you guys please figure out whether both of those meetings can come off or whether one has to be postponed or not? Gabe, Jesus, would you work with the coordination of those two board members? And with those two, plus all 5 with regard to coordination of those 2 meetings, 3 meetings.
Who's doing our governor's budget workshop?
Workshop not yet at 11:30.
The question was asked, who's doing that governor's budget workshop?
My apologies. It's Capital Advisors Group.
Capital
Oh,
advisors.
they just moved it down to Monterey instead of Santa Clara?
There were two options. There's Santa Clara and Monterey. Just less traffic, a little bit closer to Monterey.
You could attend either one, Mr. Mapanowski.
Yeah.
You could attend the one in Santa Clara County office as well.
But if we can't go, could we,
24th to 10:30.
get,
Relocate?
no, for.
Oh, I'll bring the
if I-
materials.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just so that we can all get the same
This is-
information.
Just for clarification on the calendar, the 24th, which is Thursday, that's the Drone Act workshop in the evening.
Right.
And also the budget workshop in the daytime. The traffic meeting is on Friday, the 25th.
Oh, good, okay,
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
thank you.
And under reports, it's not my job, but I just wanted to tell you that we did get that report from the Alaska Police that said they're stepping up their patrol.
Yes,
You've all got it.
Yeah, we read that, yeah.
that's awesome.
Beware.
Any other announcements, reminders?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good. Opposed?
The motion carries.
That motion carries.
You gotta sign, you gotta sign, you can't go to work, you gotta sign.
Nice.
Oh, yeah.
Last you a half
I need everybody's autograph.
I don't know,